The mahogany doors of Le Jardin Étoilé stood like gates to another world, a world where Daniel Morrison and his daughter Emma didn't belong. In precisely 3 minutes, those doors would open to reveal the most humiliating moment of Daniel's life, witnessed by 47 elegant diners who would never forget what happened next. But sometimes the worst moments of our lives become the bridges to our greatest destinies. Follow my story to the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. The February wind cut through Daniel Morrison's worn jacket as he stood outside Le Jardin Étoilé, his calloused hand gently squeezing his daughter Emma's smaller one. The restaurant's golden light spilled onto the sidewalk like honey, warm and inviting, yet somehow forbidding. Emma pressed her nose against the glass, her breath fogging the window as she stared at the crystal chandeliers that caught and scattered light like fallen stars. "Daddy, it's even prettier than in my book," she whispered, her voice filled with the kind of wonder only 8-year-olds could muster. Daniel's throat tightened. The Cinderella book. Sarah's last gift to Emma before the cancer took her had become Emma's Bible. She'd read it so many times the pages were soft as tissue paper, especially the scene where Cinderella enters the palace ballroom. For months, Emma had been drawing pictures of herself in a fancy restaurant with chandeliers, always with 3 figures at the table herself, Daniel and a ghostly outline she insisted was Mommy watching from heaven. "Ready for your birthday dinner, princess?" Daniel asked, injecting confidence he didn't feel into his voice. Emma nodded solemnly, smoothing down her navy dress, the one with tiny silver stars that Sarah had bought on sale 2 Christmases ago, insisting Emma would grow into it. She had but barely. The hem still brushed her ankles, making her look younger than her 8 years. The silver ribbon in her hair had been Sarah's, saved from their wedding day. Daniel had spent 20 minutes trying to tie it the way Sarah used to, watching YouTube tutorials on his cracked phone screen. "Do I look pretty enough, Daddy?" Emma asked, suddenly, doubt creeping into her voice. Daniel knelt down his knee, pressing against the cold concrete. "You look beautiful, Em. Mommy would be so proud." It was true. Even in her simple dress, Emma was stunning. Sarah's delicate features, those same green eyes that could shift from jade to emerald, depending on the light, the same determined chin that jutted out when she was trying to be brave. Like now. Daniel stood brushing invisible dust from his own clothes. The jacket was his father's navy blue and respectable enough from a distance. Up close you could see the careful darning at the elbows, the slight shine where the fabric had worn thin. His pants were his good ones, the single pair without oil stains from the garage. His shoes, polished to military brightness, couldn't hide the crack across the left toe. 3 months. That's how long he'd been working double shifts at Morrison's Auto Repair, the shop his father had left him now barely keeping its doors open. 16-hour days, 6 days a week. His hands cracked and bleeding from the winter cold and constant work. He'd saved every penny beyond bare necessities. No coffee runs, no lunch purchases, just peanut butter sandwiches and tap water. $340. That's what he'd managed to save. He'd checked the restaurant's menu online obsessively. They could afford 2 appetizers, 1 entree to share, and maybe if he skipped eating himself a dessert for Emma. "The reservation is under Morrison." He practiced under his breath. Except there was no reservation. He'd called 3 times, and each time was told they were booked solid for the next 4 months. But it was Emma's birthday. Her first without Sarah. She had to have this. The doorman, a tall black man with kind eyes, held the door open. "Evening, sir. Miss." He nodded at Emma, who beamed. "Good evening," she replied in her best grown-up voice, the one she practiced with her dolls. The interior hit Daniel like a physical force. It wasn't just elegant, it was a different universe. The floors were white marble shot through with gold veining. The walls were covered in silk wallpaper the color of champagne. Real paintings, not prints, hung in gilded frames. The chandeliers Emma had admired weren't just crystal. They were antiques, probably worth more than Daniel made in 5 years. The soft murmur of conversation was punctuated by the gentle clink of real silver on fine china. The air smelled of roses and something expensive Daniel couldn't identify, truffle maybe. He'd heard the word but had no reference point for the scent. The other diners looked like they'd stepped from magazine pages. Women in cocktail dresses that probably cost more than his truckmen, in suits that fit like second skins. A couple at the nearest table glanced over, and Daniel saw the microscopic pause, the quick assessment, the slight turn away. His jaw tightened. The maitre d' station stood like an altar at the front of the dining room, and behind it stood Marcus Beaumont. Daniel had Googled him. He was somewhat famous in the city's dining scene, known for running the most exclusive dining room in the state. 6 feet tall, silver-haired, with the kind of tan that came from winters in Aspen, not spray bottles. Marcus was finishing with another couple, his smile practiced and cold as winter moonlight. "The Weatherbees are expecting you. Right this way." He handed them off to a server with seamless precision. Then his eyes found Daniel and Emma. The change was instant. The professional smile remained, but something shifted behind his eyes, a hardening, a calculation. He didn't move from behind his podium, forcing Daniel to approach him like a supplicant approaching a throne. "Good evening." Daniel began, his voice steady, despite the sweat gathering at his collar. "Table for 2, please." Marcus's gaze traveled slowly from Daniel's face to his shoes and back up again, then did the same to Emma. The assessment took perhaps 3 seconds. It felt like 3 hours. "Do you have a reservation?" Marcus asked, his tone suggesting he already knew the answer. "No, we tried to make one, but—" Daniel started. "Then I'm afraid I cannot help you." Marcus didn't even open the reservation book in front of him. "We are completely committed for the evening." Daniel glanced around the dining room. He counted at least 6 empty tables. "I see several open tables," he said quietly, not wanting to make a scene but needing to try. "It's my daughter's birthday. We won't stay long." Marcus's smile grew, if possible, colder. "Those tables are reserved. Our clientele often arrives fashionably late. Could we perhaps wait? In case there's a cancellation?" Daniel heard the desperation creeping into his voice and hated himself for it. Emma tugged on his hand. "Daddy, that lady has the same napkins as Cinderella's ball," she whispered, pointing to a table where the napkins were folded into elaborate swans. Marcus heard her, his eyebrow arched. "Sir, I must be frank. Le Jardin Étoilé maintains certain standards. We have a strict dress code that I'm afraid neither you nor your daughter meet." The words hung in the air like a slap. "What's wrong with how we're dressed?" Daniel asked, though he knew. God, he knew. "Our dress code requires jackets from this decade, sir, and perhaps—" Marcus paused, his gaze lingering on Emma's dress. "Attire that hasn't been through quite so many wash cycles. The fabric pills, you see. It disturbs the ambiance we work so hard to maintain." A woman at a nearby table tittered behind her hand. Her companion whispered something, and they both looked over, their expressions a mixture of amusement and second-hand embarrassment. Daniel felt heat rise from his chest to his face. Not anger? Not yet. First came the shame, hot and liquid, flooding through him like poison. "She's 8 years old," he said quietly. "Indeed. Which raises another concern. We generally don't encourage children in the main dining room. They tend to be, Marcus waved his hand vaguely, disruptive to other guests' dining experience." Emma had gone very still beside him. Daniel looked down and saw she was staring at her shoes. Her bottom lip caught between her teeth. Sarah's gesture when she was trying not to cry. "Emma's very well behaved," Daniel said, his voice growing harder. "She knows how to act in a restaurant. I'm sure she does wonderfully at more family-friendly establishments. There's an excellent pizza place 2 blocks down. They have crayons and placemats children can color. Much more appropriate for a child's birthday celebration, don't you think?" The condescension dripped from every word like acid. "We don't want pizza," Emma said suddenly, her small voice cutting through the tension. "Mommy said I could have a fancy dinner when I turned 8. She promised before she went to heaven. Daddy saved up all his money." The dining room had gone quiet. Daniel realized everyone was watching now, some pretending not to, while others stared openly. A server had stopped mid-stride a bottle of wine worth more than Daniel's monthly grocery budget balanced in his hands. Marcus's expression shifted to mock sympathy. "How touching, but promises and reality are often different things, aren't they? Perhaps your father should have explained that some places simply aren't meant for everyone. What's that supposed to mean? Daniel asked, his hands curling into fists. I think you know exactly what it means, Mr. Morrison. Mr. Morrison. Marcus pronounced it like it tasted bad. This establishment has served senators, celebrities, captains of industry. We have a 3-month waiting list. We don't simply allow anyone to walk in off the street, especially not— He paused, his gaze making another deliberate journey over their clothes. Those who clearly cannot afford to dine here. It's awkward for everyone when the bill comes, you understand. I can afford it, Daniel said through gritted teeth. Can you— Our prefix menu starts at $200 per person. The children's menu, which we don't have, by the way, would be the same price. Then there's tax, the customary 25% gratuity wine pairings, which are essentially mandatory. He was lying about the wine being mandatory, Daniel was sure, but the prices— Daniel felt his stomach drop. The website had shown different prices, much different. The online menu said, "Oh, that hasn't been updated in 2 years. An oversight. The prices have adjusted significantly. Inflation, you understand. Quality ingredients. But I'm sure someone in your profession understands how prices can fluctuate." My profession. Marcus's gaze lingered on Daniel's hands, noting the ingrained oil stains that no amount of scrubbing could remove the calluses, the scarred knuckles. Manual labor, clearly. Mechanic construction. Hardly the typical Le Jardin clientele. Emma made a small sound, not quite a sob, but close. Daniel looked down to see tears sliding silently down her cheeks, her body trembling with the effort of not crying out loud. That's when Daniel's shame transformed into rage. White-hot, pure rage that he hadn't felt since the day the doctor told them Sarah's cancer had metastasized. You're right, Daniel said, his voice deadly quiet. I am a mechanic. I fix things that are broken, but at least I don't make my living by breaking little girls' hearts on their birthdays. Marcus's face flushed. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. You're creating a disturbance. I'm creating a disturbance. I'm standing here quietly asking for a table while you humiliate my daughter. Security can escort you out if necessary, Marcus said, reaching for the phone on his podium. That won't be necessary. The voice came from behind them, cultured, feminine, and sharp as winter ice. Daniel turned to see a woman rising from a corner table, the best seat in the house, with a view of the entire dining room and the city lights beyond. Victoria Hartwell was 73 years old, though she could have passed for 60. Her silver hair was cut in a precise bob that had probably cost more than Daniel's weekly salary. She wore a simple black sheath dress that whispered designer, with every line a single strand of pearls that caught the light like captured moonbeams, and an expression that could have frozen hellfire. She moved through the dining room with the kind of grace that came from decades of ballet lessons and finishing schools, the kind of bearing that announced she belonged anywhere she chose to be. Diners straightened in their chairs as she passed. Several men nodded respectfully. One woman whispered urgently to her companion, "That's Victoria Hartwell. The Victoria Hartwell." Daniel didn't know who she was, but Marcus clearly did. The maitre d's face went from flushed to pale in the space of a heartbeat. "Mrs. Hartwell," he stammered, "is everything prepared to your satisfaction this evening?" "No, Marcus, it most certainly is not." Her voice could have etched glass. "I've been sitting there for the past 10 minutes, watching you destroy everything my husband stood for when he founded this restaurant. I'm sorry, I don't understand." "Don't you?" Victoria turned to Daniel and Emma, her expression softening. "My dear," she said to Emma, "is today really your birthday?" Emma nodded, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. "I'm 8. 8 is a very important age. I remember when I turned 8. My grandmother took me to high tea at the plaza in New York. I wore my mother's pearls for the first time." She touched her necklace. "These same ones, actually." Emma's eyes widened. "They're beautiful." "Thank you. Now I'm sitting at that enormous table all by myself, which seems rather silly. Would you and your father do me the honor of joining me for dinner?" Marcus stepped forward. "Mrs. Hartwell, I really don't think." Victoria turned on him, and Daniel saw Marcus actually take a step back. "What you think, Marcus, is irrelevant. This gentleman and his daughter are my guests. You will seat them immediately. You will provide them with the full menu, the real menu, not the inflated prices you just quoted. You will ensure they receive the finest service this establishment can offer. And you will do it with a smile. Or tomorrow morning, you will be explaining to the board of directors why Victoria Hartwell, widow of James Hartwell, founder of this restaurant, had to witness such a disgusting display of classism and cruelty in the establishment that bears her late husband's legacy. The silence in the restaurant was absolute. Someone had stopped chewing mid-bite. You're Mrs. James Hartwell, so Daniel asked, the name finally clicking. James Hartwell had been a legendary restaurateur, starting with a single bistro and building an empire of five-star establishments across the country. His death 5 years ago had made headlines. I am, and my husband would be appalled by what just occurred here. He started this restaurant with one principle: that exceptional food and genuine hospitality should be available to anyone who walked through our doors. He used to say Victoria mechanics' money spends the same as a senator's, and often the mechanic is better company. She looked at Marcus again. James hired you himself, didn't he? 5 years ago, just before he died? Yes, ma'am. Then you heard him say those words many times, yet here you stand turning away a father trying to give his daughter a special birthday dinner because their clothes don't meet your standards. Tell me, Marcus, what designer label did my husband wear when he was washing dishes in his uncle's diner to save money for culinary school? Marcus's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. That's what I thought. Now seat my guests. Marcus gestured weakly to a hovering server. Prepare Mrs. Hartwell's table for 2 additional settings. 3 additional settings, Victoria corrected. I'll be dining with them naturally. As they were led through the dining room, Daniel was acutely aware of every eye following them. The woman who had laughed earlier was now studying her water glass like it contained the secrets of the universe. Her companion was furiously typing on his phone, probably Googling Victoria Hartwell. The corner table was magnificent. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, the city spread out like a jewelry box spilled across black velvet. The table itself was set with enough silverware to stock Daniel's entire kitchen drawer glasses that rang like bells when touched, and those swan napkins Emma had admired. A server appeared immediately, not the young man Marcus had originally gestured to, but the head server, identifiable by his silver service pins. Mrs. Hartwell, Mr. Morrison. Miss Morrison, welcome. I'm Philippe, and I'll be personally attending to you this evening. He pulled out Emma's chair first, treating her like a tiny queen. She giggled despite her tears, clearly delighted by the attention. Now then, Victoria said once they were settled, I believe someone mentioned a birthday. It's not necessary, Daniel began. Nonsense. Philippe, please inform Chef Dominique that we have a very special birthday girl dining with us tonight. 8 years old. I trust he'll know what to do. Immediately, Mrs. Hartwell. As Philippe glided away, Victoria turned her attention to Emma. Now, my dear, tell me about yourself. What do you like to do when you're not celebrating birthdays? Emma, who had been silent since her tears slowly began to open up. I like to read and draw. And I help Daddy fix cars sometimes. You help fix cars? How wonderful. What do you do? I hand him tools, and I check the oil. Daddy says I'm the best oil checker in the whole garage. Victoria laughed. Not the polite titter of the wealthy, but a genuine warm laugh. I'm sure you are. My James couldn't check oil to save his life. He once put windshield washer fluid where the oil went. The car made the most terrible sounds. Emma giggled. That's silly. They have different caps. The oil one has a picture of an oil can. So James discovered, much to his embarrassment. Now shall we look at these menus? Though I should mention the menu is merely a suggestion. Chef Dominique will make anything you'd like. Anything. Emma's eyes went wide. Anything at all. If you wanted spaghetti shaped like butterflies covered in golden cheese, he would make it happen. Daniel finally found his voice. Mrs. Hartwell, this is incredibly kind, but Victoria, please, and you are Daniel. Daniel. She studied him with intelligent gray eyes. You're uncomfortable with this. I don't like charity, he admitted quietly. Good. Neither do I. This isn't charity. This is justice. Her voice hardened slightly. What Marcus did was inexcusable. But more than that, she paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. I've been coming here every Friday for 5 years. Every Friday since James died. I sit at this table, I eat alone, and I remember. Tonight, for the first time in 5 years, I have company. You're doing me a favor. Before Daniel could respond, Philippe returned with a champagne bucket. Perrier Jouet Grand Brut for you, Mrs. Hartwell. And for the young lady, he produced a second bucket with a flourish. Our finest vintage apple cider, served in champagne flutes because birthdays deserve proper toasts. Emma gasped with delight as Philippe poured the sparkling cider into a crystal flute, the bubbles rising like tiny stars. Now, Victoria said, raising her glass, a toast to Emma on her 8th birthday. May all your wishes come true, my dear. They clinked glasses, the crystal singing. Emma took a sip and giggled as the bubbles tickled her nose. Tell me about your mother, Victoria said gently. If you'd like to. Daniel tensed, but Emma answered readily. She was beautiful, and she smelled like vanilla because she baked all the time. She used to read to me every night, even when she was sick. She said stories were magic, that they could take you anywhere. She sounds wonderful. She was. Emma's voice went quiet. She got sick when I was 6. The doctors tried to make her better, but the medicine made her hair fall out. She said she looked like a baby bird, all fuzzy. Victoria reached across the table and gently squeezed Emma's hand. My James was sick too at the end. Cancer as well. It's very hard, isn't it? Watching someone you love fade away. Emma nodded solemnly. Daddy cried. He tried to hide it, but I knew. He still cries sometimes when he thinks I'm asleep. Daniel felt his throat close. He hadn't known she knew. That's because he loved her very much, Victoria said. Tears are how love looks when it has nowhere else to go. The first course arrived in a amuse-bouche that Philippe announced as butternut squash silk with maple foam and crispy sage. It was served in a spoon that looked more like art than cutlery. Emma stared at it suspiciously. What do I do with it? You eat it in one bite, Victoria demonstrated. Like this. Emma copied her, and her eyes went wide. It tastes like autumn. The meal that followed was pure magic. Course after course arrived, each more elaborate than the last. Philippe or Chef Dominique himself would appear to explain each dish, treating Emma like a food critic whose opinion mattered desperately. There was a salad that looked like a garden with edible flowers and vegetables carved into butterflies. A soup that Felipe lit on fire at the table, making Emma squeal with delight. Fish that arrived under a salt dome that had to be cracked open with a tiny hammer, which Emma was allowed to wield. Between courses, Victoria drew their story out of them with the skill of someone who genuinely cared. She learned about Daniel's garage inherited from his father, but struggling in an era of computer-diagnosed cars and corporate chains. She heard about their tiny apartment above the shop, about Emma's straight A's, despite missing so much school during Sarah's illness, about the nights Daniel worked on his engineering degree online, while Emma slept trying to build a better future for them both. You're studying engineering? Victoria asked, intrigued. Mechanical engineering. I'm good with my hands, but I want to understand the theory behind it. Design things, not just fix them. But it's slow going. Hard to study when you're working 70 hours a week. Daddy's really smart, Emma piped up, mouthful of lobster risotto. He invented a special tool that makes fixing transmissions easier. Mr. Rodriguez at the shop next door wants to buy one. You did? Tell me about it. Daniel explained, embarrassed at first, then warming to the subject as Victoria asked intelligent questions. She understood engineering principles. It turned out her father had been an inventor, held several patents. The main course was beef so tender it could be cut with a fork with vegetables Daniel couldn't name, but that tasted like the best versions of themselves. Emma, who usually picked at her food, cleaned her plate. Then the lights dimmed. The entire restaurant fell silent as Chef Dominique himself emerged from the kitchen, followed by a parade of servers. He was carrying something that looked less like a cake and more like an architectural marvel, a chocolate castle complete with spun sugar towers that caught the light like crystal, surrounded by a moat of raspberry sauce with white chocolate swans floating in it. 8 candles flickered from the ramparts like tiny torches, but that wasn't what made Emma gasp. The entire restaurant began to sing Happy Birthday. Not just the servers, every single diner had turned to face their table, singing for a little girl they didn't know, led by Victoria's clear soprano. Emma's face was a study in wonder. Daniel saw her lips form the words, like Cinderella's ball, though no sound came out. "Make a wish, sweetheart," he whispered. Emma closed her eyes tight, her face scrunched in concentration. Then she opened them and blew out the candles in one breath. The restaurant erupted in applause. "What did you wish for?" Victoria asked. Emma looked shy. "I'm not supposed to tell, or it won't come true." "Very wise." As they ate the cake, which was somehow both art and the best chocolate Daniel had ever tasted, Victoria grew thoughtful. "Daniel, may I ask you a personal question? After all this, you can ask anything. How much do you have left on your engineering degree?" 2 years if I could go full-time, but that's impossible, so probably 4 or 5, assuming I can keep affording the classes. Victoria nodded, seeming to come to a decision. "James and I never had children. We tried for years, but it wasn't meant to be. Instead, James poured his paternal instincts into mentoring young chefs, young entrepreneurs. He created a scholarship fund for promising students who showed not just intelligence, but character." Daniel's heart began to pound, but he kept his voice steady. "That sounds like an amazing program." "It was, but since James died, I haven't awarded a single scholarship. I couldn't find anyone who felt right. Until tonight." She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. "This is my personal attorney. Call him Monday morning. The scholarship will cover your full tuition books and a living stipend so you can reduce your hours at the garage and focus on your studies." Daniel stared at the card, his vision blurring. I can't accept this." "Yes, you can. And you will. Because it's not for you, it's for Emma. That little girl deserves a father who isn't exhausted all the time, who can attend her school plays and help with homework without falling asleep over the textbooks." "Mrs. Hartwell, Victoria, this is too much." "No, it's not enough, but it's a start." She turned to Emma. "And you, my dear, how would you like to have dinner with me? Sometimes I get terribly lonely eating by myself, and I could use someone to share dessert with." "Really?" Emma breathed. "You want to have dinner with me?" "Very much. Perhaps you could tell me more about fixing cars, and I could teach you about other things. I make excellent hot chocolate, and I have a library with more books than you could read in a lifetime." "Daddy, can I—" Daniel was overwhelmed. This woman, this stranger was offering them not just money, but connection, family almost. "Of course, Em, if Victoria wants to spend time with you, that would be wonderful." Marcus appeared at their table, his face carefully neutral. "Mrs. Hartwell Chef Dominique wanted me to inform you that there will be no bill this evening. He insists it's his honor to serve you and your guests." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "That's very kind of Chef Dominique. Please thank him for me. And Marcus, a word before we leave." "Of course, madam." As they prepared to go, Emma tugging on her coat with Philippe's assistance, Daniel overheard Victoria speaking quietly to Marcus. "You have 2 weeks to submit your resignation. If you don't, I'll have you removed. And Marcus, I'll be checking. If I hear of you treating anyone else the way you treated that family tonight, I'll ensure you never work in fine dining again. My husband built this restaurant on the principle that food is love, that hospitality is sacred. You've perverted everything he stood for." Marcus's face was ash gray. "Mrs. Hartwell, please, I have a family. So does everyone you've turned away for not meeting your standards. 2 weeks, Marcus. Don't test me." Outside, the February air felt sharp and clean after the warmth of the restaurant. Emma was practically dancing, clutching a box of chocolate cake Chef Dominique had insisted she take home. "Victoria," Daniel began, "I don't know how to thank you." "Then don't. Just promise me something. Anything. Don't let Emma lose that spirit. The world will try to tell her she doesn't belong in certain places, that she's not enough. Don't let her believe it." "I promise." Victoria smiled, and for a moment Daniel saw past the elegant exterior to the lonely woman beneath. "Good. Now my car is here. But Daniel, this isn't goodbye. This is a beginning. I meant what I said about the scholarship about spending time with Emma. I've been alone too long, and you too. You remind me that there's still goodness in the world. She kissed Emma's forehead, squeezed Daniel's hand, and stepped into a black town car that had appeared as if by magic. As they walked back to Daniel's old pickup truck, Emma was quiet. Then she said, "Daddy, I think my wish came true." "Already? What did you wish for?" "I wished that Mommy would send us an angel, and she did." Daniel's throat tightened. He thought of Sarah, of her last words. "Take care of our baby, Danny. Something wonderful is waiting for you both. I can feel it." Maybe she had been right. Maybe angels came in the form of elegant women with silver hair and kind eyes who appeared at exactly the right moment to change everything. The drive home was quiet, Emma falling asleep clutching her cake box chocolate on her chin. Daniel carried her up to their apartment, tucked her into bed, still wearing her party dress, because she insisted she wanted to dream in it. As he sat at their small kitchen table, looking at Victoria's attorney's business card, Daniel thought about dignity, about pride, about the fine line between accepting help and accepting charity. He thought about Sarah, about the dreams they'd had that cancer had stolen. He thought about Emma, about the future she deserved. Monday morning, he would make that call. He would accept the scholarship, not because he needed charity, but because Victoria was right. Emma deserved a father who could be present, who could build a better life for them both. But tonight, he just sat in the dark kitchen listening to Emma's peaceful breathing from the next room and felt something he hadn't felt since Sarah's diagnosis hope. The next morning, Emma woke early, still in her party dress. She padded into the kitchen where Daniel was making Saturday pancakes their tradition. "Daddy, did last night really happen?" "It really did, Princess." "Is Mrs. Victoria really going to be our friend?" "I think so." Emma was quiet for a moment, then said, "I think Mommy would like her." "I think so too." As Daniel flipped pancakes, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Good morning, Daniel. This is Victoria. I hope you don't mind, but I had Philippe get your number from your credit card information. I wanted to make sure last night wasn't a dream for me either. Would you and Emma like to come for Sunday dinner tomorrow? Nothing fancy, just roast chicken and conversation. I live at 47 Riverside Drive. Please say yes. My housekeeper Agnes gets worried when I eat alone too often. She says I don't eat enough when I'm lonely. V8. Daniel showed the text to Emma, who literally bounced in her chair. Can we go, please? He typed back, we'd be honored. What can we bring? The response was immediate. Just yourselves, and maybe some of that transmission expertise. My 1965 Mustang is making concerning noises, and I don't trust anyone else to look at it. James restored it himself. It was his baby. Daniel laughed. A 1965 Mustang. Of course she had a classic car. Tell her I'll bring my tools, Emma said, reading over his shoulder. The special ones from Grandpa's set. She says she'll bring her tools, Daniel typed. Perfect. A girl who knows her way around an engine is a rare treasure. Until tomorrow. VH. That Saturday passed in a blur of normalcy that felt somehow different. They did laundry at the laundromat, Emma helping fold. They went grocery shopping, and for once Daniel didn't have to calculate every penny. The scholarship would change everything if it came through. They could move to a better apartment, one where the heat worked properly and the windows didn't leak. Emma could have new clothes that fit right, not hand-me-downs from the church donation box. But more than that, Daniel could be present. No more falling asleep at Emma's school concerts because he'd been up since 4 a.m. No more missing parent-teacher conferences because he couldn't afford to close the shop. No more watching Emma do homework alone because he was still at work. That evening, as they ate spaghetti and watched Emma's favorite movie, Still Cinderella, Always Cinderella, she said something that stopped his heart. Daddy, do you think Mommy can see us from heaven? I think so, baby. Why? Because I want her to see that we're okay now, that we found our fairy godmother like in the story. I don't want her to worry about us anymore. Daniel pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo, the cheap kind, but she loved it because it was pink. I think she knows, Em. I think she knows. Sunday arrived gray and drizzly, but Emma didn't care. She wore her second-best dress, saving the star dress for special occasions, and carefully packed Grandpa Morrison's toolkit the one with his initials burned into the leather. Riverside Drive was exactly what Daniel expected: old money generational wealth, the kind of neighborhood where the trees were older than most American cities. Number 47 was a brownstone that could have been a museum, 4 stories of elegant architecture with a small, perfectly manicured garden in front. Daniel parked his truck, which looked absurdly out of place, and helped Emma out. She was uncharacteristically quiet, intimidated by the grandeur. "It's like a castle," she whispered. "It's just a house, Em. And Victoria's just a person, remember? A nice person who wants to be our friend." The door was answered by a woman in her 60s, plump and smiling, with an apron that had flower handprints on it. "You must be Daniel and Emma. I'm Agnes. Mrs. H has been up since dawn cooking and fussing. She hasn't been this excited in years." She lowered her voice conspiratorially. "Between you and me, it's about time she had some real company. Those society friends of hers are all vultures circling around waiting for her to die so they can get their claws on something." "Agnes," Victoria's voice called from somewhere inside, "stop scaring them and bring them in." The interior was overwhelming, not ostentatious, but quietly, confidently wealthy. Original artwork, Persian rugs, a staircase that curved like a question mark up to unseen floors. But there were also signs of real life: a thriller novel left open on a side table reading, glasses forgotten on a windowsill, a coffee mug with a lipstick stain on the rim. Victoria appeared from what must be the kitchen, wearing jeans and a cashmere sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked 20 years younger and infinitely more approachable. "You came..." She hugged Emma, then surprisingly hugged Daniel, too. She smelled like expensive perfume and roast chicken. "The house smells amazing," Emma said, her shyness momentarily forgotten. "That's the chicken. James's recipe he taught me before he died. Said I needed at least one dish I could make perfectly in case the apocalypse happened and all the restaurants closed." She laughed. "Come, let me show you around." The tour was revealing. The formal rooms were museum perfect, but the lived-in spaces told a different story. Victoria's study was chaos, books everywhere, papers scattered, 3 coffee cups in various stages of emptiness. The kitchen was clearly the heart of the home, warm and welcoming, with copper pots hanging from hooks and herbs growing in the window. "And this," Victoria said, opening a door off the kitchen, "was James's sanctuary." It was a library floor-to-ceiling books, with a rolling ladder and deep leather chairs. Emma gasped, her eyes going wide. "All books. All books. First edition, signed copies, cookbooks, novels, poetry, everything. James believed a house without books was like a body without a soul." Can I look?" "You can do more than look. You can borrow any book you like. In fact..." Victoria pulled out a beautifully illustrated edition of fairy tales. "This was going to be my birthday gift to you, but since your birthday was Friday, it's a bit late." Emma took the book reverently. It was the kind of book they'd seen in store windows but never could afford, with gold-edged pages and illustrations that looked hand-painted. "It's too much, and..." Daniel started, but Victoria waved him off. "It's a book, not a car. Besides, books are meant to be read, not sit on shelves looking pretty. Now how about we look at that Mustang before dinner?" The garage was attached to the house, accessible through a side door. When Victoria flicked on the lights, Daniel actually whistled. It wasn't just a garage, it was a perfectly maintained workshop. Tools that would make any mechanic weep with envy, a hydraulic lift, diagnostic equipment he'd only seen in catalogs. And in the center, like a sleeping panther, sat a pristine 1965 Mustang convertible in midnight blue. "James spent 3 years restoring her," Victoria said, running her hand along the hood. "Every weekend he'd be out here, covered in grease, happy as a child. I haven't driven her much since he died. Couldn't bear to, really, but lately she's been making this sound." "Start her up," Daniel said, already in professional mode. The engine turned over immediately. James had clearly known what he was doing, but there was indeed a sound, a slight knock that shouldn't be there. Emma already had the toolkit open, laying out instruments with the precision of a surgical nurse. Daniel popped the hood, and father and daughter went to work, their movements synchronized from years of Saturday mornings in the shop. "It's the timing belt," Emma announced after a few minutes. "See, Daddy, right there." She was right. Daniel felt a surge of pride. His 8-year-old daughter had diagnosed something that would have stumped many professional mechanics. "That's my girl," he said. "Easy fix, but it needs to be done soon." "Can you fix it?" Victoria asked. "Sure, I can come by next weekend if you'd like." "I'd like that very much. Both of you coming by, I mean. Emma, you're quite the mechanic." Emma beamed. "Daddy says I have the gift. Grandpa had it too. He could hear what was wrong with a car just by listening." They worked for another hour, Daniel adjusting what he could without the proper parts. Emma handing him tools and Victoria watching with fascination, asking questions that showed she understood more about cars than she let on. Finally, Agnes called them for dinner. The dining room was formal, but Victoria had set the table simply no overwhelming array of silverware like at the restaurant. The food was incredible. The chicken perfectly roasted vegetables that tasted like the essence of themselves. Yorkshire pudding that Emma declared cloud bread, and a salad with pomegranate seeds that looked like rubies. "Mrs. Victoria," Emma said through a mouthful of potato. "Do you get lonely in this big house?" "Emma," Daniel said, mortified, but Victoria smiled. "Yes, sweetheart, I do. Very lonely sometimes. This house was meant for a family. James and I hoped, but it wasn't to be. Now it's just me and Agnes rattling around like marbles in a box." "You could get a dog," Emma suggested seriously. "Dogs are good when you're lonely." Victoria laughed, but there was something wistful in it. "James always wanted a dog, a big, silly golden retriever. I said no because of the antique rugs. Now I'd gladly sacrifice every rug in this house to hear barking again." "We can't have a dog," Emma said sadly. "Our apartment doesn't allow pets, but I draw pictures of dogs sometimes and pretend they're mine." The conversation drifted to safer topics: Emma's school, Daniel's engineering studies, Victoria's charity work. But Daniel noticed how Victoria kept steering the conversation back to them, deflecting questions about herself with practiced ease. After dinner, while Emma was in the library choosing books to borrow, Victoria and Daniel sat in the kitchen over coffee. "She's remarkable," Victoria said. "You've done an incredible job raising her alone." "I haven't been alone. Sarah's mother helps when she can, though she's getting older, and the neighbors in our building are good people. Mrs. Chen downstairs watches Emma after school sometimes." "But it's not enough, is it?" "You're drowning, Daniel. I can see it in your eyes, the same look James had when the restaurant was failing in the early days before it became successful. That desperate determination that keeps you going but eats you alive." Daniel stared into his coffee. "Some days I feel like I'm failing her. Sarah would have known what to do about the mean girls at school, about the nightmares, about the questions I can't answer. Why did Mommy have to die? Will you die too? Is it my fault? How do you answer that? You don't, you just love her through it. That's all any of us can do. Is that what you did after James?" Victoria was quiet for a long moment. "No, I had no one to love through it. I just existed, went through the motions. These dinners at Le Jardin, the charity galas, the society functions, all just elaborate ways to fill time until..." She trailed off. "Until what?" "Until I could join him, I suppose. Isn't that pathetic? A grown woman wasting her life waiting to die? That's not pathetic, that's grief." "For 5 years?" Victoria shook her head. "At some point, grief becomes a choice, a comfortable excuse to avoid living. But Friday night, watching you with Emma, seeing that love despite everything you've been through, it woke something up in me. Made me remember that James wouldn't want this half-life I've been living." Before Daniel could respond, Emma burst into the kitchen carrying an armload of books. "Mrs. Victoria, you have Anne of Green Gables, the whole series, and The Secret Garden, and Little Women, and look." She held up a cookbook. "This has pictures of cakes that look like flowers. Would you like to borrow them all?" Emma's eyes went impossibly wide. "All of them?" "Of course. Books are meant to be read, not hoarded. And next time you visit, we could make one of those flower cakes if you'd like." "Next time," Emma breathed as if afraid saying it too loud would make it disappear. "If your father agrees, I'd love to have you both for dinner every Sunday. It would give me something to look forward to, and Agnes would be thrilled to cook for people who actually eat. You should see the leftovers we have every week." Daniel looked at Emma's hopeful face and knew his answer. Pride was a luxury single parents couldn't afford. "We'd like that," he said simply, and so began a pattern that would define their next few months. Sunday dinners at Victoria's became their anchor, a point of brightness in weeks that were otherwise filled with struggle and work. Victoria was as good as her word about the scholarship. That Monday, Daniel called her attorney, a kind man named Gregory Whitman, who seemed genuinely pleased to be handling something positive for once. Mrs. Hartwell was very specific, he said. Full tuition for your remaining coursework, a monthly stipend of $3,000 for living expenses, and an additional educational fund for Emma tutoring extracurriculars, anything that enriches her education. Daniel had to sit down. $3,000 a month. Mrs. Hartwell calculated what you'd need to reduce your work hours to part-time while maintaining your current standard of living. Though between you and me, she mentioned hoping you'd use some of it to improve that standard. A better apartment, perhaps. This is life-changing. That's rather the point. Now, there are no strings attached. No requirements except maintaining a B average, which, given your transcripts, won't be a problem. Mrs. Hartwell was quite impressed that you've managed a 3.8 GPA while working full-time. The first check arrived a week later. Daniel stared at it for a full hour, afraid to deposit it, afraid it would disappear like smoke if he touched it. But Emma needed new shoes. Her toes were pushing through her current ones, and the heating bill was overdue, and there was a 2-bedroom apartment available in a better school district. He deposited the check. The changes were small at first. New shoes for Emma, a winter coat that actually fit. Groceries that included fresh fruit, not just the basics. The ability to say yes when Emma's class went on a field trip to the Science Museum instead of keeping her home because he couldn't afford the $20 fee. But the biggest change was time. Daniel cut his hours at the garage to 30 a week, keeping his mornings for classes and his afternoons for Emma. He was there when she got home from school, helped with homework, cooked real dinners instead of mac and cheese from a box. The Sunday dinners evolved. Victoria began teaching Emma to cook, starting with simple things, scrambled eggs, basic pasta, and moving to more complex dishes. The kitchen would fill with laughter and flour dust, Victoria patient with Emma's mistakes. Emma eager to learn. Daniel and Victoria would talk while they cooked about everything and nothing. She told him about meeting James when she was 19, a debutante expected to marry well-falling instead for a struggling chef who made her laugh. He told her about Sarah, how they'd met at a community college, both taking night classes, both determined to build something better. She would have loved you, Daniel said one evening, watching Victoria teach Emma to fold dumplings. Sarah always said the best people were the ones who'd known loss, said it made them kinder. Or crueler, Victoria replied. Loss can go either way. It's a choice what we do with our pain. It was during their 4th Sunday dinner that everything shifted. They were in the library after dinner, Emma curled in one of the leather chairs reading Daniel and Victoria talking quietly by the fireplace when Victoria's phone rang. She frowned at the caller ID. I'm sorry I should take this. It's my nephew. She stepped into the hallway, but her voice carried. Jonathan? What a surprise. No, I'm not alone. Friends, not that it's your business. That's hardly your concern. Absolutely not. Jonathan, I said no. This conversation is over. She returned looking troubled. Everything okay? Daniel asked. My nephew, James's sister's son. He's concerned about my new friends, worried I'm being taken advantage of. Daniel's stomach dropped. Of course. He should have seen this coming. Rich widow befriending poor mechanic, it looked exactly like what it wasn't. Maybe we should... Don't you dare, Victoria interrupted. Don't you dare let Jonathan's poison ruin this. You and Emma are the first real friends I've had in years. Everyone else wants something, my money, my connections, my influence. You two just want my company. But if your family is concerned, my family consists of vultures waiting for me to die. Jonathan has been trying to get power of attorney for years, claims I'm not competent to manage my own affairs. His concern isn't for my well-being, but for his inheritance. Emma had looked up from her book, sensing the tension. Are we causing problems? She asked in a small voice. Victoria went to her, immediately kneeling beside the chair. No, sweetheart. You're solving them. You're reminding me what family really means. But the seed had been planted. The next week, Daniel noticed a car parked outside their apartment building, someone sitting inside with a camera. When he took Emma to school, the same car followed them. At the garage, his boss mentioned someone had been asking questions about him. Some private investigator, Mike said, wanted to know about your finances, your character, whether you had any debts or addictions. I told him to get lost, but Danny, what's going on? Daniel knew exactly what was going on. Jonathan was building a case. That Sunday, he almost canceled dinner, but Emma had been looking forward to it all week. They were making souffle, and Victoria had promised to teach her the secret to keeping them from falling. The moment Victoria opened the door, she knew something was wrong. What happened? Daniel told her about the investigator, the questions, the surveillance. Victoria's face went cold in a way he'd never seen before. That little weasel, she said quietly but with venom. He's actually doing it. Doing what? Building a case for conservatorship, claiming I'm mentally incompetent, that I'm being manipulated by fortune hunters. She laughed bitterly. The irony is remarkable. The only fortune hunter in this scenario is him. We should stop coming here, Daniel said. We don't want to give him ammunition. That's exactly what he wants, to isolate me, to prove I'm incapable of making my own decisions about my own friends. Victoria's eyes flashed. Well, he's about to learn that I didn't survive 40 years of marriage to James Hartwell without learning how to fight. She made a phone call. 20 minutes later, Gregory Whitman arrived along with another man Victoria introduced as Thomas Brennan, a private investigator she trusted. Tell them what you told me, she instructed Daniel. As Daniel recounted the surveillance, Thomas took notes. Classic intimidation tactics. Jonathan hired Bob Slade, his bottom feeder, known for digging up dirt and creating it when he can't find any. Can we stop him? Victoria asked. We can do better than that. We can use this against Jonathan. Harassment, stalking a minor Emma's ain't right. That changes everything. Judges don't look kindly on people who traumatize children to get to money. I don't want Emma dragged into this, Daniel said firmly. She won't be, Gregory assured him. But we need to document everything. Every time you see that car, take a photo. Every person who mentions being questioned, get their statement. We're building a counter case. After the lawyers left, Victoria was quiet. Emma had fallen asleep on the library sofa, exhausted from the tension she didn't fully understand. I'm sorry, Victoria said finally. I've brought trouble to your door. That's the last thing I wanted. You've brought joy to our door, Daniel corrected. Emma hasn't been this happy since Sarah died. And honestly, neither have I. We're not giving up our friend because some greedy nephew wants your money. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. You really mean that? Every word. She reached out and squeezed his hand. In that moment, something shifted between them, something that had been building over weeks of shared dinners and easy conversation. Not romance, they both carried, too much grief for that, but something deeper. Family. The kind you choose, not the kind you're born into. The next few weeks were tense. The investigator continued his surveillance, but now Thomas was surveilling him in return, documenting every violation of privacy laws. Jonathan called Victoria repeatedly, alternating between sweet concern and barely veiled threats. Then Marcus Beaumont entered the picture. It was a Wednesday afternoon. Daniel was at the garage Emma at school when Marcus walked in. He looked different, desperate, his usual polish replaced by visible stress. We need to talk, he said without preamble. We have nothing to talk about. Please, just hear me out. It's about Victoria Hartwell. That got Daniel's attention. What about her? Jonathan Hartwell approached me. He knows I was fired from Le Jardin. He wants me to testify that Victoria was acting erratically that night, that she showed signs of mental decline, that her friendship with you seems inappropriate. Daniel's hands clenched. And I told him no, but he's persistent. He's offering me money, a lot of money, enough to start over, open my own place. Marcus paused. I came to warn you, and to apologize. What I did that night was inexcusable. I've lost everything because of my arrogance, my job, my reputation. My fiancé left me. I deserved it all. But Victoria doesn't deserve what Jonathan's planning. What exactly is he planning? A competency hearing. He's got 2 doctors lined up who'll testify that sudden personality changes and impulsive generosity are signs of dementia. He's got society friends who'll say Victoria has been acting strangely, isolating herself from her real friends. and he wanted me to be the star witness, the person who saw her breakdown in public. Daniel studied Marcus, looking for the angle, the trap. But the man just looked tired, defeated. Why warn us? Because James Hartwell gave me a chance when no one else would. I'd been fired from 3 restaurants for my attitude. He saw something in me, trained me, promoted me. And after he died, I betrayed everything he taught me. I became the kind of person he despised. Marcus straightened. I can't undo what I did to you and Emma, but I can try to honor James's memory by protecting his widow. What do you want in return? Nothing. I'm leaving town anyway. My reputation here is destroyed, but before I go, I wanted to do one right thing. He pulled out an envelope. This is my sworn statement about that night. The truth that Victoria was composed, dignified, and absolutely mentally competent, that she stood up to injustice with clarity and purpose. It's notarized. Give it to her lawyers. He turned to leave, then paused. Tell Emma I'm sorry. Tell her she deserves every fancy dinner, every chandelier, every good thing that comes her way. After Marcus left, Daniel called Victoria immediately. She listened in silence, then said, Bring the statement tonight. All of you, Emma, too. We need to talk. That evening, they gathered in Victoria's study. Gregory Whitman was there, along with Thomas Brennan and a woman Victoria introduced as Dr. Helen Crawford, her personal physician for 20 years. The hearing is next week, Gregory announced. Jonathan filed the papers this morning. We need to be ready. I've prepared my own evaluation, Dr. Crawford said. Victoria is not only mentally competent, she's sharp as a tack, but Jonathan's doctors will say what he pays them to say. Then we need character witnesses, Gregory said, people who can testify to Victoria's mental state. I can testify, Daniel offered. With respect, Mr. Morrison, you're the alleged fortune hunter. Your testimony would be seen as self-serving. Then who? Victoria smiled slightly. Oh, I have some ideas. 25 years of charity work builds up favors. The mayor's wife, whose daughter I helped get into rehab. The police chief, whose son James mentored. The head of pediatric oncology at Children's Hospital, where I've volunteered every Tuesday for 15 years. Her smile grew sharper. Jonathan seems to have forgotten that I wasn't just James's wife. I've been a force in this city since before he was born. Emma, who had been quietly coloring at the coffee table, suddenly spoke up. I can tell them you're not sick in your brain. Everyone turned to look at her. Sweetheart, Victoria said gently, children don't usually testify in these things. But I could write a letter. I write good letters. Miss Patterson says I have excellent penmanship and vocabulary for my age. Daniel started to object, but Victoria held up a hand. What would you say in this letter, Emma? Emma thought carefully. I'd say that you're the smartest person I know, except for Daddy. You remember everything, like how I like my hot chocolate with extra marshmallows, but not too hot, and how Daddy takes his coffee black with just a tiny bit of sugar, even though he pretends he doesn't want any sugar. You help me with my homework, and you never get the answers wrong. You taught me about art and music and which fork to use for salad. She paused, then added firmly, and you're not crazy. Crazy people don't make perfect soufflés. Yours never fall. The adults exchanged glances. Gregory cleared his throat. Actually, a letter from Emma could be powerful. The genuine perspective of a child often carries weight with judges. I don't want her involved, Daniel said. I'm already involved, Daddy, Emma said seriously. That man in the car follows us. Kids at school say we're gold diggers because Brittany's mom saw us here and told everyone. I'm involved whether you want me to be or not. Victoria's face darkened. Children are saying what... Emma shrugged, trying to seem unbothered, but Daniel saw the hurt in her eyes. It's okay. I told them they were just jealous because Mrs. Victoria is our friend, and she's teaching me to make chocolate soufflé and their moms can barely make boxed mac and cheese. Despite the tension, Victoria laughed. That's my girl. Over the next week, they prepared for war. Victoria's society friends rallied around her, not all of them, but enough. The ones who mattered, who had seen beneath the surface of charity galas and appreciated the real woman underneath. Thomas Brennan discovered that Jonathan had significant debts, gambling debts to the kind of people who didn't accept bankruptcy as an excuse. His need for Victoria's money wasn't greed, it was desperation. This changes everything, Gregory said. He's not a concerned nephew. He's a desperate man who needs his aunt's money to stay alive, possibly literally. The morning of the hearing arrived gray and rainy. Daniel dressed in his only suit, the one he'd worn to Sarah's funeral. Emma wore her star dress, now a bit short, but still her favorite. Victoria had offered to buy her a new dress, but Emma had refused. "This is my lucky dress," she said solemnly. "Good things happen when I wear it." The courthouse was intimidating, all marble and echoes. Jonathan was already there with his lawyers, 3 men in suits that probably cost more than Daniel made in a month. Jonathan himself was younger than Daniel had expected. Maybe 35, with the kind of aggressive handsomeness that spoke of personal trainers and expensive dermatologists. He approached Victoria immediately. "Aunt Victoria, it doesn't have to be this way. I'm only trying to protect you." From what, Jonathan? From having friends. From being happy for the first time in 5 years. From being taken advantage of. These people. He gestured at Daniel and Emma. "They're obviously after your money." "The only person after my money is you," Victoria said coldly. "How much do you owe now, Jonathan?" $500,000 more. Jonathan's face flushed. "That's not relevant, isn't it?" The hearing was called to order. Judge Patricia Chen presiding, a good sign according to Gregory. She had a reputation for seeing through manipulation. Jonathan's lawyers presented their case first. The doctors testified about personality changes, impulsive behavior, the dangers of elderly people being manipulated. They painted a picture of Victoria as a lonely, confused woman being exploited by a calculating con man who was using his daughter to gain sympathy. Then they called their character witnesses. Society matrons who testified that Victoria had been acting strangely, associating with inappropriate people, neglecting her social obligations. "She missed the Children's Hospital Gala," one woman said with horror, as if this was proof of mental decline. "She never misses it." "Because I was having dinner with friends," Victoria muttered beside Daniel. "Real friends, not checkbook philanthropists." Finally, Jonathan himself testified, playing the concerned nephew beautifully. He actually managed tears when talking about his dear Uncle James and how he just wanted to protect James's legacy. Then it was their turn. Dr. Crawford dismantled the medical testimony, explaining that making new friends and changing routines was actually a sign of healthy grieving, not mental decline. The mayor's wife testified about Victoria's recent generous but completely rational donation to the city's after-school programs. The police chief talked about her clarity and intelligence when she'd helped design a new community outreach initiative just last month. Then Gregory introduced Marcus's statement. Jonathan's lawyers objected, but Judge Chen allowed it. As Gregory read Marcus's words, his description of Victoria's dignity, her controlled anger at injustice, her precise and intelligent intervention, Jonathan grew visibly agitated. "That man was fired for incompetence," he burst out. "His testimony is worthless." "Actually," Victoria said calmly, "he was fired for cruelty. By me. Which rather proves my mental competence, doesn't it?" Finally, Gregory presented Emma's letter. Emma had written it in her best handwriting on Victoria's personal stationery. "Dear Judge, my name is Emma Morrison, and I am 8 years old. Mrs. Victoria Hartwell is my friend. Some people think that's weird because she's old and rich and I'm young and poor, but I don't think friendship is about age or money. Mrs. Victoria is the smartest person I know. She teaches me things like how to fold napkins into swans and how to make eggs that are fluffy like clouds and which paintings in the museum are worth looking at longest. She remembers everything I tell her, even little things like how I don't like crusts on sandwiches and that my favorite color is purple, but specifically the purple of sunset, not the purple of grape juice. Some people say she's crazy for being our friend, but I think they're crazy for not seeing how sad she was before. She told me once that she felt like she was sleeping while awake, just waiting for time to pass. Now she smiles. Real smiles, not the fake ones grown-ups do when they're pretending. My daddy isn't after her money. He didn't even want to take the scholarship at first because he's proud like that. He fixes her car and won't let her pay him. He tells me we have to be extra careful, to never ask for anything, to always say thank you, to never take advantage. That's not what gold diggers do, I think. Mrs. Victoria is teaching me that family isn't just about blood. It's about choosing to love people even when it's hard or when other people don't understand. She chose us, and we chose her. And that's not crazy. That's beautiful. Please don't let them take our friend away. Sincerely, Emma Morrison. P.S. I'm attaching a picture I drew of us at Sunday dinner. As you can see, we are all smiling. Crazy people don't smile like that. The courtroom was silent when Gregory finished reading. Judge Chen was studying the drawing Emma had included 3 figures around a table holding hands with a big heart drawn around them all. I'd like to speak with Mrs. Hartwell directly, Judge Chen said. Victoria stood composed and elegant. Mrs. Hartwell, tell me about your friendship with the Morrison family. Victoria was quiet for a moment, then began. Your Honor, 5 years ago, my husband died. For 5 years, I've been going through the motions of living without actually being alive. I attended charity galas, I wrote checks, I fulfilled my social obligations. But I was empty. I was so profoundly lonely that some days I couldn't get out of bed. Not from depression, but from the simple question of why bother? She paused, gathering her thoughts. Then 6 weeks ago, I watched a man try to give his daughter a special birthday dinner despite their obvious financial struggles. I watched them be humiliated and turned away because they didn't meet some arbitrary standard of worthiness. And I watched that little girl, that remarkable, brilliant little girl, try not to cry because she didn't want to make her father feel worse. Victoria's voice grew stronger. In that moment, I saw everything wrong with the world I inhabited. The casual cruelty, the thoughtless judgment, the equation of worth with wealth. And I saw something else, a father and daughter who loved each other with the kind of fierce devotion my husband and I had shared. They reminded me that real love, real connection has nothing to do with bank accounts or social status. She looked directly at Jonathan. My nephew suggests I'm being manipulated. The only manipulation I've experienced is from him, the constant pressure to sign over power of attorney to move into assisted living so he can control my assets to liquidate James's estate. Daniel Morrison has never asked me for anything. In fact, he resisted my help. The scholarship I gave him, he tried to refuse it. The dinners we share. He brings dessert, insists on helping with dishes, fixes things around my house without being asked, and refuses payment. She turned back to the judge. Your Honor, for the first time in 5 years, I have a reason to wake up on Sunday mornings. I have a little girl who asks me endless questions about everything from why soufflés rise to why stars twinkle. I have conversations with an intelligent man about engineering and books and how to raise a daughter alone. I have a purpose beyond writing checks. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. If that's mental incompetence, then I pray I never recover my sanity. Judge Chen nodded slowly. Mr. Hartwell, she said to Jonathan, do you have any response? Jonathan stood, his carefully composed mask slipping. She's giving away money to strangers. She's destroying my uncle's legacy. Oh, your uncle's legacy, Victoria said sharply, was generosity. James would have loved Daniel and Emma. He would have seen what I see good people deserving of a chance. They're using you. No, Jonathan, the only person trying to use me is you. How much do you owe to the Torino family now? 600,007. The courtroom stirred. The name Torino was well known, connected to organized crime, though never proven. Jonathan went pale. That's not how did you... I'm mentally incompetent, remember. Yet somehow I managed to hire investigators, discover your debts, your affairs, your embezzlement from your company. Oh yes, I know about that too. Shall we discuss that, or shall we end this charade? Judge Chen raised her hand. I've heard enough. Mrs. Hartwell, I find no evidence of mental incompetence. You appear to be in full possession of your faculties, making conscious and deliberate choices about your relationships and your finances. The petition for conservatorship is denied. She looked at Jonathan with obvious distaste. Mr. Hartwell, I suggest you focus on resolving your own issues rather than attempting to control your aunt's assets. And if I hear of any further harassment of Mrs. Hartwell or the Morrison family, I'll personally ensure you're prosecuted to the full extent of the law. She turned to Daniel and Emma. Mr. Morrison. Miss Morrison, the court apologizes for any distress this frivolous lawsuit has caused you. The gavel came down. It was over. Outside the courthouse, Jonathan tried one more time. Aunt Victoria, please. They'll kill me if I don't pay. Victoria studied him for a long moment. James left you a trust fund. $50,000 a year, more than enough to live on if you weren't trying to live like a mogul. You've blown through it with gambling and bad investments and trying to impress people who don't care if you live or die. $50,000 is nothing. It's more than Daniel makes in a year, and he's raising a child on it. Successfully, I might add. She pulled out her checkbook, wrote something, tore it out. This is a check for $700,000. Enough to clear your debts with some left over. Cash it, and you never contact me again. Ever. You don't call, you don't write, you don't show up at family events. You're dead to me. Jonathan grabbed the check. You're really choosing them over your own family. They are my family. You're just a biological accident. Jonathan left without another word. Emma tugged on Victoria's hand. Did you just give him $700,000? I did. But that's so much money. Victoria knelt down to Emma's level. It is. But do you know what it's worth every penny to protect you and your daddy from him? Money is just paper, sweetheart. Family, real family, is priceless. Emma threw her arms around Victoria's neck. I love you, Grandma Victoria. Victoria froze. It was the first time Emma had called her that. Tears slid down her cheeks as she held the little girl tight. I love you too, my darling girl. The weeks following the hearing brought a peace Daniel hadn't felt since before Sarah's diagnosis. The investigators' car disappeared from their street. The whispers at Emma's school faded as new gossip took precedence. Most importantly, their Sunday dinners with Victoria continued without the shadow of Jonathan's threats. But peace Daniel had learned was often just the calm before another storm. It started with small things. Victoria seemed tired during their dinners, though she dismissed it as poor sleep. She forgot ingredients while cooking something that had never happened before. Once she called Emma by the name Margaret, then looked confused when Emma corrected her. Who's Margaret? Emma had asked innocently. Victoria had blinked, shaking her head. I don't know. How odd. Daniel noticed her hands trembling as she poured tea, noticed how she gripped the banister when climbing stairs. But it wasn't until she collapsed in the kitchen one Sunday afternoon that the truth came out. It happened fast. One moment Victoria was laughing at Emma's story about a boy in her class who had eaten a bug on a dare. The next she was gripping the counter, her face gray. Victoria. Daniel jumped up. I'm fine, Her knees buckled. Daniel caught her before she hit the floor, Emma screaming in terror. Call 911. Daniel ordered Agnes, who was already reaching for the phone. Victoria was conscious but disoriented, her words slurring. James, is that you? It's Daniel. Stay with me, Victoria. Daniel. She focused on him with effort. Don't let them... The papers are in the desk. Emma needs... The paramedics arrived in minutes, loading Victoria onto a stretcher with practiced efficiency. Daniel rode with her while Agnes stayed with Emma, the little girl crying so hard she could barely breathe. At the hospital, the emergency room doctor was professionally vague. We're running tests. Are you family? Yes, Daniel said without hesitation. I'm her son. The lie came easily, necessarily. He'd learned that hospitals had rules about information about who could stay, who could make decisions. Hours passed. Daniel paced the waiting room, fielding calls from Agnes, reassuring Emma, trying not to think about another hospital, another waiting room, another person he loved fighting for their life. Finally, Dr. Crawford arrived. She looked exhausted, her usual professional composure cracked. How is she? Daniel asked immediately. Stable. But Daniel, we need to talk privately. They found a quiet corner. Dr. Crawford took a breath. Victoria has been hiding something from everyone. From you, from me, even from herself to some degree. She has a brain tumor, specifically a glioblastoma. The word hit Daniel like a physical blow. He knew that word. Sarah's oncologist had mentioned it once, explaining how lucky they were that Sarah's cancer wasn't that type. How long has she known? She was diagnosed 6 months ago. She refused treatment, said she'd watched James go through chemo and radiation and wouldn't do that to herself. She's been managing symptoms with medication, but the tumor is growing. 6 months ago, Daniel repeated numbly, before she met us. Yes, Daniel, I think meeting you and Emma gave her a reason to fight. She's agreed to treatment now. She wants time with you both. Daniel sank into a chair. How long does she have with treatment? Maybe a year, possibly 18 months if we're very lucky, without treatment 3 to 6 months. Can I see her? She's asking for you, and for Emma. Victoria was awake when Daniel entered her room looking small and fragile in the hospital bed. The monitors beeped steadily, IV lines feeding into her arm. I suppose my secret's out, she said with a weak smile. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have let Emma get close to me if you knew? Would you have let her love someone else who was dying? Daniel couldn't answer because she was right. He would have protected Emma, kept her away, and all three of them would have missed out on something precious. I'm sorry, Victoria continued. I was selfish. I wanted to know what it felt like to be a grandmother before I died. I wanted to matter to someone again. You matter to us. You've mattered since that first night. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. The treatment is horrible, Daniel. I watched James go through it. The sickness, the weakness, the loss of dignity. I don't know if I'm strong enough. You don't have to be strong. You just have to be here. Emma needs you. I need you. That little girl has already lost one mother. I can't bear the thought of leaving her too. Then don't. Fight every day, every treatment fight. Not for yourself, but for her. For the birthdays you promised her, the cooking lessons, the books you haven't read together yet. Victoria squeezed his hand. Bring her tomorrow. I need to see her. I need to explain. How do I tell an 8-year-old that someone else she loves is dying? Honestly, children are stronger than we think, and Emma is extraordinary. That night was one of the longest of Daniel's life. Emma had cried herself to sleep in Victoria's guest room, refusing to leave the house that smelled like her grandmother. Daniel sat in James's study, surrounded by photos of a life well lived, and tried to find the words to break his daughter's heart again. The next morning, Emma was quiet, sensing the weight of unspoken truth. She dressed carefully in the purple dress Victoria had bought her last week, brushed her hair until it shone, and sat at the breakfast table with the solemnity of someone much older. Is Grandma Victoria going to die? She asked suddenly. Daniel nearly dropped his coffee mug. Why would you ask that? She collapsed like Mommy did that first time. And you have the same face you had when the doctors talked about Mommy. There was no point in lying. She's sick, Em. She has a tumor in her brain. Emma nodded slowly. Is she going to fight it? She's going to try. Then we'll help her. We helped Mommy fight as long as we could. We can help Grandma Victoria too. The wisdom in her young voice broke Daniel's heart. No child should be this familiar with loss, with the protocols of terminal illness. At the hospital, Victoria had been moved to a private room in the oncology ward, a cruel irony. Daniel thought that she'd ended up in the same ward where Sarah had spent her final weeks. Emma climbed carefully onto the bed, curling against Victoria's side, with the practiced care of someone who knew how to avoid IV lines and tender spots. Are you scared? Emma asked. Terrified, Victoria admitted. It's okay to be scared. Mommy was scared too, but she said scared doesn't mean you stop fighting. It just means you fight even when it's hard. Victoria stroked Emma's hair. Your mother was a wise woman. Will you lose your hair like Mommy did? Probably. Emma considered this. I can make you hats. I learned to knit at after-school program. I'm not very good yet, but Mrs. Chen says I'm improving. I would love a hat made by you. They spent the morning talking planning, pretending the future was certain. Victoria would start chemotherapy next week. She'd move in with Daniel and Emma temporarily. Her house was too big, too empty for recovery. They'd continue Sunday dinners even if Victoria couldn't eat. They'd finish reading all of Jane Austen together. They'd make Emma's Halloween costume by hand. They'd bake Christmas cookies using James's secret recipe. Each plan was a small act of defiance against the diagnosis, a thread of hope to weave into a safety net. Dr. Crawford entered with a team of oncologists. The lead doctor, a young woman named Dr. Patel, was blunt but kind. Mrs. Hartwell, I won't sugarcoat this. Glioblastoma is aggressive. The tumor is already stage 4. But we have new treatments, clinical trials that show promise. If you're willing to fight, we're willing to throw everything we have at this. What are the odds? Victoria asked. 5-year survival rate is about 5%. The room fell silent. 5%. 1 in 20. But, doctor, Patel continued, you're otherwise healthy, you have a strong support system, and most importantly, You have reasons to fight. Those things matter more than statistics. Victoria looked at Emma, who was gripping her hand with fierce determination. Then we fight, Victoria said. The next weeks fell into a rhythm of controlled chaos. Victoria's first chemo session left her violently ill, and Daniel held her hair back as she vomited just as he'd done for Sarah. But Victoria insisted on going home to their apartment afterward, not her mansion. I want to be where the love is, she said simply. They'd converted their small living room into a bedroom for her, Daniel and Emma sharing Emma's room. It should have been cramped, uncomfortable, but instead it felt right, like family. Victoria's wealth made certain things easier. Private nurses when needed, the best medications, a nutritionist who prepared meals that Victoria might actually keep down. But money couldn't buy what mattered most. Emma reading to Victoria when she was too tired to hold a book. Daniel carrying her to the bathroom when her legs wouldn't cooperate, Agnes arriving daily with fresh flowers and gossip from the society world Victoria had abandoned. The side effects were brutal. Victoria's lustrous silver hair fell out in clumps until Daniel gently shaved her head, Emma, holding Victoria's hand throughout. Her hand shook too badly to write, so Emma became her scribe, taking dictation for letters Victoria wanted to send. The steroids made her face swell, transforming her elegant features into something unrecognizable. But there were good days, too. Days when Victoria felt strong enough to teach Emma to make French onion soup. Days when they all went to the park, Victoria in a wheelchair feeding ducks and pretending everything was normal. Days when Victoria's wit was sharp as ever, making them all laugh until their stomachs hurt. It was on one of those good days that Marcus Beaumont reappeared. Daniel was at the garage, having returned to work part-time to keep the business alive. Emma was at school. Victoria was alone in the apartment, resting on the couch when the doorbell rang. She answered it, expecting Agnes, finding instead the former maitre d' of Le Jardin Étoilé. Marcus looked different, humbler. He'd lost weight, his designer clothes replaced with simple jeans and a sweater. He held a covered dish that smelled divine. "Mrs. Hartwell," he said nervously, "I heard you were ill. I brought soup. It's James's recipe, the one he only made for special customers. I remembered how to make it." Victoria studied him for a long moment, then stepped aside. "Come in." They sat at the small kitchen table, Victoria tasting the soup carefully. It was perfect, transporting her back to early days with James when he'd make this exact soup to cheer her up during difficult times. "Why are you here, Marcus?" "To apologize properly and to thank you." "Thank me?" "Getting fired was the best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to look at who I'd become, a snob, a bully, everything I'd once despised. I've been working at a shelter kitchen downtown, cooking for people who really need meals, not millionaires who pick at their food. And I said, and I've never been happier. Poor but happy. Turns out my fiancée left because of who I'd become, not because I lost my job. We're talking again. She says I'm becoming the man she fell in love with again." Victoria smiled. "James would be proud." "I hope so. Mrs. Hartwell, I know I have no right to ask, but I want to help. Anything you need, cooking, cleaning, driving, to appointments. I owe Daniel and Emma a debt I can never repay. You owe them nothing. Your statement at the hearing was payment enough. Please, let me do this." And so Marcus joined their strange family. He came 3 times a week cooking meals. Victoria could tolerate teaching Emma advanced cooking techniques, discussing engineering with Daniel. It turned out he'd studied it before switching to culinary school. The weeks turned to months. Victoria's tumor shrank slightly enough to give them hope. She celebrated Emma's 9th birthday with a party that rivaled any society gala, not in expense, but in joy. The entire apartment building was invited. Mrs. Chen made dumplings. Mr. Rodriguez brought his guitar, and Marcus created a cake that looked like a stack of books. Each one a story Emma loved. But then came the seizures. The first one happened during Sunday dinner. Victoria was laughing at something Emma had said when suddenly her body went rigid, her eyes rolling back. Daniel managed to get her to the floor, turning her on her side as Dr. Crawford had taught him, while Emma called 911 with the practiced calm of a child who'd made that call before. The seizures meant the tumor was affecting new areas of the brain. Dr. Patel adjusted medications, but they all knew what it really meant. The countdown had accelerated. Victoria began putting her affairs in order with methodical precision. She met with Gregory Whitman daily, revising her will, setting up trusts, making provisions. She recorded videos for Emma, one for every birthday until she turned 21, graduation messages, wedding wishes. "I want to be there," she told Daniel as he held the camera. "Even if I can't be there, I want her to know I'm thinking of her, proud of her, loving her." She gave Daniel power of attorney, medical directives, passwords to everything. "Why me?" he asked. "You have lawyers, professional executors. Because you're my son in every way that matters. Because I trust you to do what's right, not what's profitable." October arrived with unusual warmth, Indian summer painting the city gold. Victoria had good days and bad days, but the bad were beginning to outnumber the good. She'd lost so much weight that Emma could lift her easily. Her memory came and went like tide some days, crystal clear, others foggy with confusion. On Halloween, she rallied. Emma was going as Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Victoria's suggestion, complete with lace collar and tiny gavel. Victoria insisted on doing her makeup, her shaking hand somehow steady for this important task. "You make an excellent Supreme Court justice," Victoria told her. "Perhaps one day it won't be pretend." "You'll see it," Emma said firmly. "When I'm sworn in, you'll be in the front row." Victoria smiled, not correcting her, not mentioning that even if by some miracle she survived that long, she likely wouldn't remember it. The tumor was stealing her memories now, recent ones first. Sometimes she forgot Emma's name, called Daniel James, asked for her mother who'd been dead 40 years. But that Halloween night she was present, aware herself. They went trick-or-treating in the building. Victoria, in her wheelchair, dressed as the Statue of Liberty, crown and all. She handed out full-size candy bars that Marcus had bought, delighting the children who'd learned to love the strange, sick lady who'd moved into 4B. That night, after Emma had crashed from her sugar-high Victoria, and Daniel sat on the small balcony watching the city lights. "I need to tell you something," Victoria said. "While I still can." Victoria. "No, listen. I've left everything to you and Emma. The house, the money, all of it." Daniel started to protest, but she held up a trembling hand. "It's not charity. It's not even generosity. It's justice. You and Emma gave me something worth more than all the money in the world. You gave me a reason to fight a family, to love a purpose beyond waiting to die. The money is just paper. What you gave me was life." "We love you," Daniel said simply. "I know. That's the miracle. After James died, I thought I'd never be loved again, never love again. But here we are, three broken people who made something whole together." She was quiet for a moment, then continued. "There's something else. In James's desk in the secret drawer, he thought I didn't know about it. There's a letter. For Emma. Don't give it to her until she's 18. What does it say? The truth about her mother and me." Daniel frowned. What truth? But Victoria's eyes had gone unfocused, slipping into one of her confused moments. Sarah was such a lovely girl, so brave at the end. "You knew Sarah." Victoria blinked clarity, returning briefly. "The letter. When she's ready." Then she was gone again, talking to James about restaurant plans lost in a time before cancer, before loss, before Daniel and Emma existed in her world. November brought the first snow and Victoria's final decline. She stopped eating, her body refusing even water. Hospice was called, the apartment transformed into a vigil space. Emma refused to go to school, spending every moment possible with Victoria, reading to her, even when Victoria showed no signs of hearing. Friends came to say goodbye. The mayor's wife, the police chief, dozens of people whose lives Victoria had touched. Even Jonathan came standing awkwardly in the doorway until Victoria opened her eyes and saw him. "I forgive you," she whispered, and he fled in tears. On November 15th, a cold Tuesday that felt like any other day except it wasn't, Victoria opened her eyes with perfect clarity. She looked at Daniel, at Emma, at Agnes and Marcus, who'd been keeping vigil. "My family," she said clearly. "My beautiful family." She held Emma's hand, touched Daniel's face, smiled at each person in turn. "James is here," she said, looking at a corner of the room where no one stood. "He says it's time." "Not yet," Emma pleaded. "We haven't finished Pride and Prejudice. You promised we'd finish it together." Victoria squeezed her hand. "You'll finish it for me. And when you get to the part where Elizabeth realizes she loves Darcy, think of me. Love isn't always what we expect, is it? Sometimes it's a stranger in a restaurant who changes everything. Her breathing grew shallow. Daniel held Emma as she cried, feeling his own tears falling. "Thank you," Victoria whispered, "for seeing me, the real me. Not the widow, not the money, just me." "We love you," Emma said fiercely. "Forever and always." Victoria smiled. "Forever and always." She closed her eyes, her breathing slowing, spacing out. At 3:47 p.m., with her chosen family surrounding her, Victoria Hartwell took her last breath. The funeral was a contradiction, like Victoria herself. The service was held at the cathedral, attended by hundreds, a formal affair that would have made the society pages. But the reception was at Daniel's apartment building. The community room transformed with photos of Victoria's life. Not the formal portraits, but candid shots. Victoria teaching Emma to cook. Victoria and Daniel working on the Mustang. Victoria at Halloween Crown Askew laughing. Marcus catered making James's recipes. Mrs. Chen and the neighbors mixed with senators and CEOs, all united in grief and love for a woman who'd learned late in life that family isn't about blood or money or social standing. Gregory Whitman pulled Daniel aside during the reception. "We need to discuss the estate. It's substantial." "How substantial?" "Approximately $47 million plus the house and various investments." Daniel nearly fainted. That's impossible. James was very successful, and Victoria was an excellent investor. It's all yours and Emma's in trust until she's 25. But Daniel, there's something else. A letter Victoria left to be opened after the funeral. Daniel took the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was Victoria's handwriting, shaky but determined. "My dearest Daniel and Emma, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. Hopefully. Peacefully. Definitely loved. I have one last gift for you, though it may seem more burden than blessing. I want you to turn the Riverside house into a home for families like yours, single parents struggling to make ends meet while fighting for better lives. Call it Hartwell House. Make it a place where love matters more than money, where children can be children, where parents can breathe. Marcus has agreed to run the kitchen, providing meals so parents don't have to choose between working and cooking. Agnes will manage the house. There's enough money in the foundation I've established to run it indefinitely. But more than that, I want you to live there, not as caretakers, but as family. Make it the home James and I never got to fill with children. Fill it with laughter and chaos and the kind of love that transforms strangers into family. This isn't charity, my darlings. This is legacy. Not James's or mine, but ours, the three of us who found each other when we needed it most. All my love." Victoria P.S. Emma checked James's desk. The secret drawer is opened by pressing the rose carving. The letter inside is for you when you're older, but there's something else there for now. Emma raced to the house that afternoon, Daniel following. She found the drawer, pressed the rose, and gasped when it opened. Inside was a small velvet box and 2 envelopes, one marked for Emma on her 18th birthday, and another marked for Emma now. The box contained Victoria's pearl necklace, the one she'd worn that first night. The letter for now was short. "My dearest Emma. These pearls have been worn by strong women for over 100 years. First James's grandmother, a suffragette who fought for women's right to vote. Then his mother, who ran a business when women weren't supposed to. Then me, and now you. Wear them when you need to be brave. Wear them when you accept your Nobel Prize or argue before the Supreme Court, or simply need to remember that you are loved beyond measure. You made my last year worth living. You taught me that family is about choosing to love even when you know loss is coming. Forever and always." Grandma Victoria Emma put on the pearls immediately, the strand too long for her small neck, but perfect nonetheless. That December, Hartwell House opened its doors. The first family to move in was a young mother with twin boys fleeing an abusive relationship. Then came a widowed father with 3 daughters. A grandmother raising her grandson while his parents battled addiction. Daniel and Emma took the top floor of the same rooms Victoria and James had shared. It felt right, like coming full circle. The house filled with the sounds it had always craved: children laughing, families arguing, and making up life in all its messy glory. Marcus ran the kitchen like a maestro, creating miracles from simple ingredients, teaching anyone who wanted to learn. Agnes ruled the house with an iron fist wrapped in a velvet glove, somehow knowing who needed tough love and who needed gentleness. And in the library, in a place of honor, sat a photo from that first night at Le Jardin Étoilé. Not a photo anyone had taken, but one Emma had drawn from memory. 3 figures at a fancy table, an unlikely family, just beginning to discover each other. Spring arrived at Hartwell House with a chaos that would have made Victoria laugh. 7 families now called it home, and the morning symphony of slamming doors, crying babies, and hurried breakfasts had become Daniel's new normal. He stood in the industrial kitchen at 5 a.m., helping Marcus prep breakfast for 32 people when Gregory Whitman called. "Daniel, we have a problem. Jonathan Hartwell is contesting the will." Daniel's hand stilled on the knife he was using to dice potatoes. On what grounds? He got his $700,000. He's claiming undue influence, that Victoria wasn't mentally competent when she changed her will. He's also suggesting that you hastened her death. The knife clattered to the counter. He's suggesting I killed her. Not directly, but he's implying that you influenced her medical decisions, encouraged her to refuse certain treatments. He's demanding an autopsy. She's been buried for 4 months. I know, it's grotesque, but he's found a judge who's willing to hear the case. Daniel, I need you to know if he wins. Everything could be reversed. The house, the foundation, Emma's trust. Everything. Marcus, who'd been listening while stirring oatmeal, spoke up. That parasite. Victoria knew exactly what she was doing. We all saw it. We need to prove that Gregory said through the speaker. I need every record, every video, every piece of evidence that Victoria was competent. The hearing is in 2 weeks. After the call, Daniel slumped against the counter. They'd built something beautiful here, something that honored Victoria's memory. 17 children were thriving in stable homes. 3 single parents had graduated from job training programs. Emma was flourishing, her grades perfect, her smile returning. And now Jonathan threatened to destroy it all. We fight, Marcus said simply. Victoria fought for us. Now we fight for her. That evening, Daniel called a house meeting. The 7 families gathered in the library, children playing on the carpet while adults filled every available chair. He explained the situation, watching faces shift from confusion to anger. That's bullshit, said Keisha, the young mother with twins. Mrs. V knew exactly what she was doing. She interviewed each of us personally before we moved in. She helped me with my citizenship test 2 weeks before she died, added Roberto, the widowed father. Her mind was sharp as a razor. What do you need from us? Asked Mrs. Park, the grandmother, raising her grandson. Testimony, statements, anything that proves Victoria was competent. You'll have it, Keisha said firmly. All of it. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. Emma, now 9.5, insisted on being involved. I'm not a baby, she said firmly. Grandma Victoria was my grandmother. I want to help. She spent hours going through videos on Victoria's phone, finding clips of Victoria teaching, laughing, planning. There was one from just a week before she died, Victoria explaining the legal structure of the foundation with perfect clarity, even as her body failed. But it was Mrs. Chen from their old apartment building who provided the most damning evidence against Jonathan. I clean offices at night, she said, arriving at Hartwell House with a box of papers, including the office of Mr. Jonathan Hartwell's accountant. I maybe accidentally copied some very interesting documents. The documents showed Jonathan's debts were far worse than even Victoria had known. He owed over $2 million to various creditors, had been embezzling from his company, and was days away from federal indictment for tax fraud. This is illegally obtained, Gregory said, though he was studying the papers intently. We can't use it directly. But knowing about it helps, Daniel said. We can find legal ways to discover the same information. Exactly. The morning of the hearing arrived gray and oppressive. Daniel, dressed in his best suit bought with his first engineering job paycheck, a position he'd gotten with his degree that Victoria's scholarship had enabled. Emma wore the pearls over her school uniform, insisting they would bring luck. The courthouse was packed. Word had spread through Victoria's social circle, and many had come to support Daniel. But Jonathan had his supporters too. Society vultures who resented Victoria's money going to those people. Jonathan sat with his legal team, 3 lawyers in suits that screamed billable hours. He'd lost weight, his handsome face gaunt, his eyes desperate. The federal indictment had come through 3 days ago. Without Victoria's money, he was facing prison and possibly worse from his creditors. Judge Patricia Chen presided again, which Gregory said was good news. She saw through Jonathan once. She'll do it again. Jonathan's lawyers presented their case first. They'd found a psychiatrist who'd never met Victoria but was willing to testify that brain tumors could cause personality changes and impaired judgment. They presented financial records showing the suspicious timing of the will changes. They even suggested that Daniel had isolated Victoria from her real friends. Mrs. Hartwell was a prominent society figure, Jonathan's lead attorney argued. Then suddenly she's living in a cramped apartment with strangers, giving away millions to people she'd known for mere months. This isn't generosity, it's exploitation. Then they played their trump card, a video from 2 weeks before Victoria's death, showing her confused calling Daniel James, not recognizing Emma. This woman, the attorney said, was clearly not competent to make financial decisions. Daniel's heart sank. The video was real from one of Victoria's bad days. Out of context, it looked damning. Then it was Gregory's turn. "Your Honor," he began, "what you just saw was a woman with terminal brain cancer having a moment of confusion. What you didn't see were the 23 hours and 45 minutes of that day when she was completely lucid." He presented his evidence methodically. Videos of Victoria explaining the foundation structure dated after the confused episode. Written documents in her hand, clear and coherent. Testimony from Dr. Crawford about Victoria's periods of clarity, which were legally sufficient for decision-making. Then came the character witnesses. Marcus testified about Victoria's mental sharpness during their cooking sessions, how she'd corrected his technique on James's recipes even in her final weeks. Agnes spoke about Victoria's detailed planning for the house, down to which rooms would best suit families with young children. Mrs. Chen, through a translator, explained how Victoria had helped her grandson with calculus homework the week before she died. She explained better than teacher, very smart lady. But it was Emma who changed everything. "Your Honor, but," Gregory said, "Emma Morrison would like to speak." Jonathan's lawyers objected, but Judge Chen allowed it. Emma stood at the witness stand, small but composed, wearing Victoria's pearls. "My name is Emma Morrison," she began, her voice clear. "I'm 9¾ years old. Grandma Victoria wasn't confused about what she was doing. She was very specific. She pulled out a notebook, Victoria's planning journal, which Emma had found in the desk. She wrote everything down when her hands could still write. Look." Emma opened the journal, showing pages of notes. She interviewed every family before they moved in. She wrote down their stories, their needs, their children's names. Does that sound confused to you? She flipped to another page. Here's her plan for the foundation. She calculated how much money would be needed to run the house for 50 years. She set up education funds for every child. She even planned what flowers to plant in the garden based on which ones would make the children happy. Emma looked directly at Jonathan. "You think because she sometimes forgot names that she forgot how to think. My mom forgot our names sometimes too when she was dying, but she still knew she loved us." Grandma Victoria knew exactly what she was doing. She was building something that would last longer than any of us. She held up another page. This is from 3 days before she died. She wrote, "Jonathan will contest the will. He's desperate, and desperate people do desperate things. Make sure Daniel has good lawyers. Make sure Emma knows I was sound of mind when I chose them. Money is just paper. Love is the only real legacy." The courtroom was silent. Emma continued, "You want to know about undue influence. The only person who tried to influence Grandma Victoria was you, Mr. Jonathan. She has pages about your calls, your threats, your debts. She knew about the tax fraud before the IRS did." Jonathan's face went white. "That's speculation," his lawyer began. "No," Emma said calmly. "It's in her journal. October 3rd. Jonathan admitted to skimming from company accounts. He's desperate. Offered to sign away all claims for $2 million. Refused. He needs to face consequences." She closed the journal. Grandma Victoria wasn't confused. She was the smartest person I've ever known. And she chose us not because we tricked her, but because we loved her. We loved her when she was bald from chemo. We loved her when she couldn't remember our names. We loved her when she was scared and sick and dying. That's what family does. Judge Chen was visibly moved. Thank you, Emma. You may step down. But Emma wasn't finished. Wait, there's one more thing. She pulled out an envelope. Grandma Victoria gave me a letter to open on my 18th birthday, but she also said if Jonathan contested the will, I should open it early. Objection, Jonathan's lawyer shouted. That could be anything. I'll allow it, Judge Chen said. Emma opened the envelope with careful fingers and began to read. My dearest Emma, if you're reading this before your 18th birthday, it means Jonathan has done exactly what I expected. I'm sorry you have to deal with this, but you're strong enough. You've been strong enough since you were 8 years old standing in that restaurant trying not to cry. I need you to know the truth. Your mother and I knew each other. We were in the same cancer ward, she in room 304, me visiting James in room 318. This was 18 months before that night at the restaurant. Your mother was alone during many of her treatments. Your father was working desperately to pay bills. So I sat with her. We talked for hours. She told me about you, about Daniel, about her fears and hopes. The day before she died, she asked me to watch over you both. She said, they're going to need someone and Daniel's too proud to ask for help. I promised I would find you. It took me 6 months after she died to work up the courage. I ate at Le Jardin every Friday, hoping to see you. When you finally walked in on your birthday, I recognized you immediately. Sarah's eyes. Daniel's determination. I didn't plan what happened next. Seeing you rejected, humiliated, treated as less than it awakened something in me. Sarah had said you were special. She was right. Everything that followed was my choice made with complete clarity. The scholarship, the friendship, the will, all of it was what I wanted, what Sarah wanted, what James would have wanted. Jonathan will claim I was manipulated. The truth is, I manipulated events to bring us together. I orchestrated our meeting. I chose you before you ever chose me. If that's undue influence, then I'm guilty. But I was never confused, never incompetent, never exploited. I was a woman honoring a promise to another dying mother and finding a family in the process. All my love, Victoria. P.S. Tell Jonathan that James always knew he was stealing from the company. We have evidence dating back 3 years. It's in a safety deposit box at First National Box 472. The key is taped under James's desk drawer. The courtroom erupted. Jonathan's lawyers were frantically whispering. Jonathan himself looked like he might faint. Judge Chen called for order. Mr. Hartwell, she said coldly, would you like to respond to these allegations? Jonathan stood on shaking legs. I withdraw the contest. You withdraw? Yes. Your Honor, I was mistaken about my aunt's mental state. How convenient. Judge Chen's voice could have frozen fire. Mr. Hartwell, I find your challenge to be not only without merit, but brought in bad faith. You've wasted this court's time and caused immense distress to a grieving family. She turned to Daniel and Emma. The will stands as written. Furthermore, Mr. Hartwell, you will pay all legal fees associated with this case, and I'm forwarding this entire transcript to the federal prosecutor handling your tax case. I'm sure they'll find it illuminating. The gavel came down with finality. Outside the courthouse, Jonathan approached them one last time. He looked broken, aged 10 years in the past months. The safety deposit box, he said quietly. Does it really exist? Emma looked at him with Victoria's sharp gaze. Open the drawer and find out. He walked away without another word. Later they learned he'd fled the country that night, leaving behind debts charges and a legacy of greed that would follow him forever. Back at Hartwell House, the 7 families had prepared a celebration. Banners reading Victoria's Legacy Lives hung from the windows. Marcus had cooked a feast. The children had made cards saying, "Thank you, Emma," with crooked letters and earnest drawings. That evening, as the house settled into peaceful chaos, homework at the dining table, babies being bathed, teenagers arguing over the TV remote, Daniel found Emma in the library reading the letter again. She knew my mom, Emma said wonderingly. All that time she knew her. Are you angry she didn't tell us? Emma considered this. No, I think she wanted us to love her for her, not because of Mom. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. Dad, Emma asked, using the title she'd recently graduated to from Daddy. Do you think Mom and Grandma Victoria are together now? Watching us? Daniel pulled her close. I think they're probably critiquing our cooking and planning our futures and arguing about whether you should go to Harvard or Yale. Emma laughed. MIT. I want to be an engineer like you. Victoria would say you should be whatever makes you happy. Then I want to be everything. Engineer, lawyer, chef, writer. Grandma Victoria said there's no rule that says we can only be one thing. She was right. She usually was. A knock at the door interrupted them. It was Keisha holding her twins' hands. Sorry to bother you, but the boys wanted to say goodnight to Miss Emma. She promised to read them a story. Emma jumped up. I promised them dragons tonight. Is that okay, Dad? Go ahead. But not too scary. Remember what happened last time. As Emma led the boys away, chattering about friendly dragons who ate vegetables, Keisha lingered. Daniel, I wanted to thank you again for all of this. Before Hartwell House, I was 1 week away from living in my car with the boys. Now I have a job, a safe home, a future. Victoria's gifts saved us. Victoria believed everyone deserved a chance. We're just carrying on her work. No, Keisha said firmly. You're doing more than that. You're creating family where there was none. You're teaching our kids that money doesn't determine worth. You're showing them that kindness can change everything. After she left, Daniel wandered through the house. In the kitchen, Marcus was teaching Roberto's daughters to make pasta from scratch. In the playroom, Mrs. Park was helping several children with an art project that seemed to involve copious amounts of glitter. In the study, 2 single mothers were quizzing each other for their nursing exam. This was Victoria's true legacy. Not the money, not the house, but the connections, the community, the proof that love could transform strangers into family. His phone buzzed. An email from his engineering firm. They wanted to promote him to lead designer, a position that would double his salary but require longer hours. A year ago, he would have taken it without question, desperate for financial security. Now he archived the email without responding. They had enough. More than enough. Time with Emma. Time for the families at Hartwell House. Time to honor Victoria's memory by living fully that was worth more than any promotion. Emma appeared at his side, the twins trailing behind her in dinosaur pajamas. They want you to read too, she announced. They say you do the best dragon voices. But you promised. We can both read. Grandma Victoria said the best stories are the ones shared with people you love. As Daniel settled into the library's biggest armchair with Emma and the twins, more children appeared, drawn by the promise of stories. Soon he had 8 kids arranged around him, the older ones helping the younger ones see the pictures. Once upon a time, Daniel began, there was a dragon who was very, very lonely. Like Grandma Victoria was, one of the children piped up. Yes, Daniel agreed. Just like that. But then the dragon met a special family, and they loved him even though he breathed fire sometimes, Emma added. Exactly. They loved him especially when he breathed fire because they knew that's when he needed love the most. As he read weaving Victoria's story into the fairy tale, Daniel felt a presence, warm, approving, loving. Maybe it was imagination, maybe it was memory, or maybe it was Victoria and Sarah watching their families thrive. The story went on, children adding details. Parents pausing in doorways to listen. The house filling with the kind of warmth that had nothing to do with temperature and everything to do with home. This was what Victoria had bought with her millions. Not a mansion, but a home. Not charity, but chances. Not a monument to the past, but a foundation for the future. Outside, spring rain began to fall, gentle and nourishing. In the garden, the flowers Victoria had planned were beginning to bloom. Cosmos for hope, sunflowers for loyalty, forget-me-nots for remembrance. And in the library of Hartwell House, surrounded by chosen family, Daniel read on his voice, joining the symphony of life that Victoria had orchestrated with her final greatest gift, the proof that love, unlike money, multiplies when shared. 5 years had passed since Victoria's death. and Hartwell House had become something even she couldn't have imagined. The morning of Emma's 14th birthday dawned crisp and bright, with Daniel standing in the garden Victoria had designed, watching the sunrise paint the city gold. The garden had evolved into something magical. What started as Victoria's simple plan had grown through the contributions of every family who'd lived there. The Hernandez family had added a vegetable patch. The Nguyen's had built a koi pond. The Jackson twins, now teenagers, had constructed an elaborate treehouse that served as headquarters for the dozen children currently in residence. "Dad," Emma's voice came from behind him. She was taller now, nearly his height, with Sarah's grace and Victoria's sharp intelligence. "Marcus needs you in the kitchen. Birthday crisis, apparently." Daniel laughed. What did he set on fire this time? "Nothing yet, but the day is young." They walked back together, Emma's arm linked through his. She still wore Victoria's pearls every important day. Birthdays, first days of school, science fair presentations, where she invariably won. The kitchen was in controlled chaos. Marcus, now the official head chef of Hartwell House, was orchestrating breakfast for 43 people, the 12 families currently in residence, plus the alumni families who still came for Sunday dinners. "Daniel, thank God," Marcus said, flour in his hair. "The industrial mixer broke on Emma's birthday. Victoria would haunt me if we don't have proper croissants." "On it," Daniel said, grabbing his toolkit. 5 years of maintaining Hartwell House had made him an expert in everything from industrial appliances to 100-year-old plumbing. As he worked, he listened to the familiar morning symphony. Keisha, now a registered nurse, was helping her twins with homework. They were 13 now, honor students, both their futures bright with possibility. Roberto's daughters were practicing violin in the music room instruments donated by a symphony member who'd heard about Hartwell House. Mrs. Park was teaching Korean to a group of children in the library cultural heritage, being something Victoria had insisted on preserving. The mixer repaired Daniel, grabbed coffee, and found his usual spot at the corner table where he could observe everything. This had been Victoria's spot when she'd lived her final months here, and he'd inherited it along with so much else. Gregory Whitman arrived as breakfast was being served, carrying a thick envelope. "Happy birthday, Emma," he said, hugging her. He'd become like an uncle over the years, handling the foundation's legal matters pro bono. "And Daniel, we need to talk, privately." They went to Daniel's office, formerly James's study, while Emma entertained the younger children with stories of her robotics team's latest competition. "What's wrong?" Daniel asked, recognizing Gregory's serious expression. "Nothing's wrong, but something's happened. Do you remember Jonathan Hartwell?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "Of course. He died last week, in Brazil, where he'd been hiding. Heart attack, apparently." Daniel felt a complex mix of emotions, not satisfaction exactly, but a sense of cosmic justice. "There's more," Gregory continued. "Before he died, he sent this." He handed Daniel a letter. "Mr. Morrison, I'm dying, and with death comes clarity, or perhaps just the lifting of delusion. I hated you for 5 years, blamed you for taking what I thought was mine. But I've had time to really think, and I understand now what Victoria saw in you and Emma. You gave her what I never could, genuine love, without expectation of reward. You saw her as a person, not a bank account. You made her last year meaningful. I'm writing to tell you something Victoria never knew. James left me a letter too, one I was supposed to read after Victoria died. I burned it in anger when I learned about the will. But I remember every word. He knew I was stealing. He knew about my debts, my failures, my weakness. But he also knew Victoria would need someone after he died, and he hoped foolishly that I might become that person. He left me chance after chance to redeem myself. I failed him. I failed Victoria. I failed myself. But you succeeded where I failed. You became the son they never had, Emma the granddaughter they dreamed of. There's a bank account in the Caymans. Number enclosed. It contains the $700,000 Victoria gave me plus interest. I never spent it, couldn't bring myself to use her final gift after betraying her. It should go to Hartwell House. Consider it my attempt at redemption, though I know it's too little too late. Tell Emma she was right to protect Victoria from me. Tell her she's everything Victoria believed she could be. Jonathan Hartwell." Daniel stared at the letter, Then, at the account information. Nearly $1 million, enough to fund Hartwell House's programs for 2 more years. Can we accept this, Scott? He asked Gregory. Legally, yes. Morally, that's your call. Daniel thought of Victoria, of what she would do. We accept it, but we use it to create a program for people like Jonathan, those who've lost their way because of addiction, debt, desperation. Victoria would want redemption to be possible for everyone. Gregory smiled. She would be proud. As they returned to the celebration, Daniel found Emma in the library with Agnes, who at 82 still ran Hartwell House with an iron fist and a heart of gold. Tell her, Agnes, Emma was saying. Tell him about the letter. Agnes looked uncomfortable. It's not the right time, dear. What letter? Daniel asked. Emma stood, her face serious. Dad, I'm 14 now, old enough to make my own decisions. I want to know about the connection between Mom and Victoria. The whole truth. She was right. She was old enough. Daniel nodded to Agnes, who retrieved a box from the safe behind Victoria's portrait. Victoria left several letters, Agnes explained, to be opened at different times. This one was for Emma's 14th birthday. Emma opened it with steady hands, though Daniel saw them tremble slightly. My dearest Emma 14. Such an important age. The bridge between childhood and young womanhood. Your mother and I talked about this age specifically during those long hours in the cancer ward. It's time you knew everything. Your mother knew she was dying long before she told your father. She came to the hospital for tests alone, scared, trying to be brave. I was there with James for his treatment. She was crying in the chapel, and I couldn't walk past. We talked for hours that day. She told me about you, about your father, about our dreams and fears. I told her about James, about our childlessness, about my own fears of being left alone. We became friends. Unlikely friends, perhaps. A mechanic's wife and a society matron. But cancer is a great equalizer. In those hospital rooms, we were just 2 women facing mortality. Your mother asked me to do something. She asked me to find you and your father after she was gone to make sure you were okay. She knew Daniel would never ask for help, would work himself to death trying to give you everything. She wanted someone to step in to provide what she couldn't. I promised, but I was a coward. After James died, I retreated into my grief. It took me 18 months to keep my promise, and even then, I didn't plan it. I went to that restaurant hoping to see you, yes, but I never expected what happened. Seeing you rejected, seeing your father's humiliation, seeing you try not to cry, it broke something in me. Or perhaps it fixed something that had been broken since James died. Your mother would be so proud of who you've become. The brilliant, compassionate, fierce young woman who stands up for others, who solves complex problems, who loves without reservation. But here's what I need you to understand. You're not living the life your mother planned for you. You're living a better one. She dreamed of you having opportunities. You've created opportunities for others. She hoped you'd be educated. You're educating entire families. She wanted you to be loved. You've become love itself, spreading it wherever you go. The enclosed key opens a safety deposit box at First National Bank. Inside is something your mother left for your 14th birthday, along with something from me. Happy birthday, my darling girl. You are proof that love transcends death, that families can be chosen, that grace can emerge from grief, forever and always. Grandma Victoria Emma was crying silently, tears sliding down her cheeks. Daniel pulled her close, feeling his own eyes burn. She knew Mom, Emma whispered, really knew her. They planned this, Daniel said, understanding finally hitting him. Sarah and Victoria planned for us to find each other. Agnes smiled softly. Love always finds a way. Now, shall we go to the bank? They went that afternoon, Emma clutching the key. The safety deposit box contained 2 items, a jewelry box and a thick envelope. The jewelry box held Sarah's engagement ring, the one Daniel had sold to pay for her treatment, or thought he had. Victoria bought it, Emma breathed. She bought it from the pawn shop and saved it. The envelope contained letters from Sarah, one for each birthday from 14 to 21, and a longer one for her wedding day. But on top was a note in Victoria's handwriting. Emma, your mother wrote these during her final weeks. I promised to deliver them at the right times, but you're stronger than she imagined, you'd be wiser than she dared hope. Read them when you feel ready, not when the calendar says you should. Time is just a construct. Love is eternal. That evening, Hartwell House celebrated Emma's birthday with its usual chaos. 43 voices sang "Happy Birthday" in at least 6 languages. Marcus had created a cake that looked like a DNA double helix. Emma's current obsession was genetics. The little ones performed a play they'd written about a princess who became a scientist and saved the kingdom with solar panels. But the real gift came after dinner when the doorbell rang. Daniel opened it to find a woman in her 40s, well-dressed but nervous, holding the hand of a boy about 10. "Is this Hartwell House?" she asked. "Yes. Can I help you?" "My name is Margaret Chen. No relation to Mrs. Chen from your old building. This is my son Michael. I heard you help single parents. My husband died 6 months ago. Cancer. I'm about to lose our house. My job won't cover childcare, and I don't know what to do." Daniel saw Emma appear beside him, Victoria's pearls catching the light. "Come in," Emma said warmly. "You're just in time for cake. We always have too much cake." As they led the bewildered woman and her son inside, Daniel felt that familiar presence, Sarah and Victoria, perhaps, or just the accumulated love of all who'd found shelter here. "How many families can the house hold?" Margaret asked, looking around in wonder at the controlled chaos of children playing parents helping with homework, teenagers arguing over video games. "As many as need it," Emma answered. "That's what Grandma Victoria always said, love expands to fill whatever space you give it." Later that night, after Margaret and Michael had been settled into the recently vacated room 7 after the birthday dishes were done, and the house had settled into nighttime quiet, Daniel found Emma on the roof garden reading her mother's first letter by moonlight. "Want company?" he asked. She nodded, scooting over on the bench Victoria had installed for stargazing. "Mom says she's proud of me," Emma said quietly. But how could she know she'd be proud? She didn't know what I'd become. "She knew you," Daniel said. "Your core, your heart. That hasn't changed, just grown stronger." "Dad, do you think we've done enough with Hartwell House with Victoria's money?" Daniel looked out over the city lights, twinkling like earthbound stars. In 5 years, Hartwell House had sheltered 43 families, seen 28 parents graduate from education programs, helped 16 families transition to independent housing. The ripple effects were immeasurable: children who'd been homeless now excelling in school, parents who'd been desperate now mentoring others, a community that proved family wasn't about blood, but about choice. "Victoria once told me that we can't save everyone," he said, "but we can save someone, and that someone might save someone else, and on like ripples in a pond. The butterfly effect." Emma said, her scientific mind making connections. Small actions creating massive change over time. "Exactly." They sat in comfortable silence. Then Emma asked, "Do you ever think about what would have happened if we hadn't gone to the restaurant that night, all the time?" "I think we would have found each other anyway," Emma said with the confidence of 14. "Mom and Victoria planned it. The universe conspired for it. Love demanded it." Before Daniel could respond, Marcus appeared on the roof, phone in hand. "Daniel, you need to see this." The phone showed a news article. Hartwell House model to be replicated, nationwide federal grant funds, 10 new houses. Daniel read in shock. A federal initiative inspired by Hartwell House's success was funding similar homes in 10 major cities. The grant specifically cited their model of combining housing, education, childcare, and community support. "Victoria's legacy," Marcus said softly. "It's spreading." Emma stood Victoria's pearls catching the moonlight. "We need to prepare. They'll want to know how we did it, how to replicate it." "You sound like Victoria," Daniel said, smiling. "Good. Someone needs to." The next morning brought chaos of a different sort. News crews arrived wanting to tell the Hartwell House story. Government officials came to study their model. Other cities sent representatives to learn. Emma handled it all with remarkable poise, giving tours, explaining programs, sharing Victoria's philosophy of radical hospitality and chosen family. Watching her, Daniel saw Sarah's compassion, Victoria's intelligence, and something uniquely Emma, a fierce determination to expand the circle of love ever wider. That afternoon, as the last news crew was packing up, a familiar figure appeared in the doorway. Thomas Brennan, the private investigator who'd helped them fight Jonathan years ago, now graying but still sharp-eyed. Mr. Morrison. Miss Morrison, he said formally, then broke into a grin. Hell of a thing you've built here. Thomas. Emma hugged him enthusiastically. Did you see the news? We're going national. I did. That's actually why I'm here. He pulled out an envelope. I've been hired to investigate Hartwell House. Daniel tensed. By whom? Anonymous client. They want to know if this place is real, if the stories are true, if it's worth a significant investment. How significant? 8 figures significant. Emma whistled. That would fund Titi. 50 more houses. Thomas finished. My client wants to create the Victoria Hartwell Foundation dedicated to replicating this model globally. But first they need to know it works the way the stories claim. So investigate, Daniel said simply. We have nothing to hide. Thomas smiled. I already have. I've been watching for 3 months interviewing former residents, reviewing finances. My report is complete. He handed them a thick folder. I concluded that Hartwell House isn't just successful, it's revolutionary. You've created a replicable model for addressing homelessness, supporting single-parent families, and building genuine community. The success rate is unprecedented. 92% of families who stay here for 6 months or more achieve stable, independent housing within 2 years. Who's your client? Emma asked. They'll reveal themselves if you accept the funding. But I can say this, they knew Victoria. They were inspired by her transformation in her final year. They want to honor that. Daniel and Emma exchanged glances. Another mystery benefactor, another gift from Victoria's past. We accept, Emma said without hesitation. But with conditions. Each house must maintain Victoria's principles. No family turned away for lack of money, decisions made by resident councils, and every house must have a library. Thomas laughed. They said you'd say that. They agreed to all terms. As Thomas left, promising the mysterious benefactor would be in touch. Emma turned to Daniel. Do you think Victoria planned this too? Even this? Daniel thought about it. No, I think she started something bigger than even she imagined. She planted seeds of kindness, and we're just now seeing what grows from them. That evening, during their traditional birthday dinner recap, the 12 families currently in residence gathered in the library. Margaret Chen and her son Michael were there, still looking overwhelmed but hopeful. The Jackson twins were helping serve dessert. Mrs. Park was teaching the younger children to fold paper cranes for decoration. Emma stood tapping her glass for attention, a gesture pure Victoria. 5 years ago, she began, a lonely widow took a chance on a struggling father and his daughter. She gave us more than money, she gave us purpose, family, and the radical idea that love doesn't divide when shared, it multiplies. She looked around the room at faces that had become family. Now we have a chance to multiply that love again, to create 50 more places like this, 50 more homes where families aren't just sheltered, but transformed, where children aren't just safe, but thriving, where single parents aren't just surviving, but succeeding. She raised her glass of apple cider, Victoria's favorite, to Victoria Hartwell, who taught us that the best families are the ones we choose. To my mom, Sarah Morrison, who made sure we'd be caught when we fell. To all of you who prove every day that strangers are just family we haven't met yet. To family, the room chorused, glasses clinking. Later, much later. When the house was quiet and the city slept, Daniel stood in Victoria's room. Now a small museum of her life, her portraits, her books, the desk where she'd written her letters. On the desk was a photo from Emma's 9th birthday, the last one Victoria had attended. They were all laughing at something Daniel couldn't remember what, but the joy was palpable. Victoria bawled from chemo but radiant with happiness. Emma gap-toothed and giggling, Daniel looking at them both with such love it took his breath away even now. We did it, Victoria, he whispered to the photo. We took your gift and made it grow. Emma's becoming everything you dreamed and more. The families we've helped are helping others. Your love is rippling out in ways you never imagined. A warm breeze stirred the curtains though the windows were closed. The scent of roses filled the room, though no roses were present. And for just a moment, Daniel could swear he heard two voices harmonizing in laughter, Sarah and Victoria together, at last watching their carefully orchestrated chaos bloom into something beautiful. Emma appeared in the doorway, unable to sleep from birthday excitement and the momentousness of the day's news. "Dad, do you think they can see us, Mom and Grandma Victoria?" Daniel pulled her close, this remarkable young woman who carried the best of all of them. Sarah's courage, Victoria's wisdom, his own determination, and something uniquely her own, the ability to see possibility where others saw only problems. "I think," he said carefully, "that love like theirs doesn't end with death. It transforms, becomes part of everything we do, everyone we help. Every family that finds shelter here, every child that finds safety, every parent that finds hope, that's Sarah and Victoria still at work in the world." Emma nodded, satisfied. "Then we'd better make sure we do it right. 50 houses, Dad. 50 chances to change everything for families like ours. That's a lot of responsibility. Good thing Victoria taught us that the impossible is just what hasn't been done yet." As they stood there, father and daughter carrying forward the legacy of two remarkable women, the first light of dawn began to creep across the sky. Somewhere in the house, a baby cried and was quickly soothed. Somewhere else, the coffee maker gurgled to life as Marcus began his daily ritual. Life at Hartwell House was stirring another day of controlled chaos and chosen family beginning. The doorbell rang unusual for 5 a.m. Daniel and Emma went down together to find a young woman with two small children, one on her hip, one holding her hand. She looked exhausted, desperate, but her eyes held hope. Is this the place that helps people?" she asked. Emma opened the door wider. "Yes, come in. You're home." As they led the small family inside, Daniel felt the truth of it resonate through the old house's bones. This was home not just for the families who lived here, but for the spirit of love and generosity that Victoria had awakened. Every person who walked through these doors became part of the story, adding their own chapter to the ever-growing tale of how kindness could transform the world one family at a time. In the kitchen, Marcus was already preparing extra plates. Agnes was finding clean towels, and Mrs. Park was cooing over the children in Korean, making them smile despite their tears. "What's your name?" Emma asked the young mother. "Hope," she whispered. "My name is Hope." Emma smiled. Victoria's pearls catching the morning light. "Perfect. Hope is what we do best here." And in that moment, with the house waking around them and new lives beginning their transformation, Daniel understood that Victoria's greatest gift hadn't been the money or even the house. It had been the proof that love. Genuine love could overcome any obstacle bridge, any divide, and create families from the most unlikely beginnings. The story that had begun with rejection at a fancy restaurant had become something neither Daniel nor Emma could have imagined: a movement, a model, a testament to the power of choosing love over fear, generosity over greed, family over solitude. As Hope and her children were embraced by the Hartwell House family, as 50 more houses prepared to open across the nation, as Emma began planning how to help run them all, Daniel knew with certainty that somewhere, somehow, Sarah and Victoria were smiling. The investment, the sacrifice, the pain of loss. It had all led to this, a legacy of love that would outlive them all, rippling out in ever-widening circles, touching lives they'd never meet. Creating families they'd never know, but forever carrying the truth Victoria had discovered in her final year. Family isn't about blood. It's about choice. And love, real love, never truly dies. It just transforms, spreads, and grows until the whole world becomes family.